We're ready to go, Dan.
You ready to go? All right, can we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United
United States
States
of
of
America,
America.
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Liberty
justice.
and justice for all. Can I have a motion to open the meeting, please?
So said. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 1 on the agenda is the board reorganization. I'm going to need nominations for the vice chair and for the chair of the board.
I make a nomination, Dan Kelly, for remain as chairman.
I second that.
Any other nominations? Can I have a vote on that, on that nomination?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I make a nomination that, oops, thank you. I forgot your last name. Demuse. I make the nomination that Paul Demuse is vice chair. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Oh, I think Paul's opposed.
I don't vote for myself, do I?
No.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. I have no comments other than thank you very much. Continue on for another year as we are. Item number 3, 150 York Street project work session with Berkeley Investment. Bill and whoever is there from Berkeley Investment, can we get started on this part of it?
Pull them close up and turn the green on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to you and the Vice Chair again. We are, again, my name is Esther Bian. I'm the Director of Development with Berkeley Garba, and we are delighted to be back after last month's session to talk more about 150 York Street. I think we have a presentation that Bill is bringing up, but before that, actually, we had a quick update from our traffic consultant. So Bob Michaud from MDM, we engaged him and worked very closely with Bill and with Mark's team to look at the traffic aspect of the project, which I believe was a request from last month. If you're all familiar with how long these efforts can take, and I think Bob and his team pulled a small miracle out of a hat to get this done for us. So if we could actually pull up the traffic slides, we'll start with that, and then we'll get into the design. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, board. For the record, my name is Robert Michaud. I'm the managing principal of MDM Transportation Consultants. We're based in Marlborough, Massachusetts. So what I'd like to do is provide really a high-level overview for the board on where we are with traffic and transportation. We've conducted a comprehensive study. We began that process by having a conversation with your peer review consultant, GPI, to ensure that the framework of what we've studied is appropriate and some of the underlying assumptions that we're applying in the analysis are appropriate into industry standards. So what I'll be presenting to you is an outcome of that conversation. We do expect a formal filing of the traffic report with GPI so that they can proceed through their formal peer review process. If you could go to the next slide. The board is aware of where the site is, and relative to York Street, we've studied a series of 5 total locations, again, in consultation with your peer review consultant. These would represent key gateways or likely impacted locations beginning on the west side at Washington Street, Route 138 and York Street, currently unsignalized. Of course, the driveway itself for the facility, and both ends of Pine Street, the York and Pine intersection, and the Pine and Pleasant Street intersection. We've gone one additional location to the east beyond that, as it serves as, again, a gateway, if you will, to the Route 24 corridor, and that is the Turnpike Street and Pleasant Street intersection, which is signalized, and as I'll present in a moment, the subject of mitigation by others. So we've expanded from our initial, we call it due diligence assessment, to include those additional locations to the east based on that GPI consultation. The next slide really presents a context of the property relative to various means of transportation, right? So this is not necessarily all about traffic, but also understanding what area services might be available to residents of this particular site, whether they bike, they walk, they consider public transportation, the BAT bus or MBTA commuter rail. And what you'll see in this map is that within a 1 mile radius of this facility, there is a substantial amount of infrastructure already that comprises contiguous sidewalk systems. There are ongoing efforts right now through Mass DOT to improve the infrastructure along Washington Street to include formal bike lanes, for instance. We're just over half a mile from the first BAT stop, about a 5-minute walk from this particular site that happens to be shown in a red format here in the lower left corner. And we're just north of where the Stoughton MBTA station is as well. So it's important to understand the context of the site and some of the initiatives that are being planned for this infrastructure, which I'll review in a moment. The next slide, one of those primary initiatives is a DOT project working in concert with the town to improve the intersection of York Street at Washington Street. That involves a widening of York Street, signalizing the intersection, adding dedicated bike lanes, and a widening and improvement of the pedestrian infrastructure along Washington Street. The next slide highlights a couple of the more fundamental aspects of that improvement, all underway as we speak. This would include, shown in yellow, the additional right turn lane from York Street, shown in a very high color format, the new signal system that would be added there, pedestrian crosswalks at each one of the legs of that intersection, and as you look in more detail, the bike lanes and other features that will be added there. That is a principal gateway to or from the west for this property. The planning for this particular project goes back years. In fact, it was planned at a time when the hospital itself was operational and was factored into the geometry and the lane arrangements and the signal control that are now being advanced. The next slide will give you a sense historically of how a hospital use we would expect to generate traffic. We understand the site today is not operating. The hospital closed in April of 2024. It has a significant number of what we call bed units, 157 bed units, so it was not an insubstantial location. And on an industry standard basis, a facility at that size, 157 bed units, using industry standards, would generate in excess of 200 vehicle trips an hour. We're not taking credit for that. We're not applying that as a credit against what we're proposing, but it simply frames it provides a framework of understanding of how the infrastructure was planned at the time the hospital was open for the York and Washington Street intersection. The next slide, we expect the project itself to generate. We use industry standard trip rates and methods to estimate the peer PI. They've been PI to. It comprises two types of. We have the active adult component, the so-called component, and then you've got the multifamily, multi-story facilities called multifamily residential units. And the combination of those two really represents a peak generation of between 120 and 120 total vehicles over the course of a typical commuter hour in the morning and in the evening. Roughly equivalent to about half what the hospital or a hospital would generate at the bed unit count that I just mentioned. Again, we're not taking any credit for that hospital use, but we know that the infrastructure that's been planned and is now in process anticipated some activity from that site, which will also accommodate what we're proposing.
Those figures were all based on not having any traffic improvement at York and Washington.
That is correct. Okay. That's right. So the trip generation estimates what we're using as the basis for our analysis do not take any credit for alternative travel modes, They don't take any credit for the infrastructure improvements that are now underway. So this is just a raw 30,000-foot level view of what we would expect the site to generate. The study then takes that information and applies it to how those trips would be distributed among the various routes to get to or from workplaces, et cetera, which I'll speak to in a moment. We could probably skip over to the next diagram, which is this next level of analysis, that we've taken those trips, the 120 to 126 vehicle trips, and we've distributed those among the various roadways that would serve as gateways to the site, right? So depending on where you're inclined to work, Metro West, Boston area, south or north, would dictate which route would best accommodate that particular route, that pattern. We also have the benefit of having conducted traffic counts for each of these locations in the spring of this year, schools in session, which also show in real time what patterns actually exist today for York Street, for Pine Street, and other roadways. We anticipate that folks, by and large, will be commuting to or from the north as a primary destination, and will split almost equally between the Washington Street corridor and the Pleasant Street corridor, right? We are expecting about a third of the trips from this particular site to be oriented to the north Washington Street, to or from the north on Washington Street, roughly 45% to or from the north along the Pleasant Street corridor, and the balance of trips to be oriented to the south, about 20%. Now, relative to the volumes that currently exist on those roadways, the vehicle trip increases for this project relative to what we have today, which is essentially it's a vacant site, represents about a 3% change to or from the north on Washington Street, between a 3 and 4% change on the Pleasant Street corridor to or from the north. It's not a substantial number necessarily on a percentage basis, but those in raw terms are the type of increases that we're expecting will occur. And were the basis for our initial conversation with GPI in selecting the appropriate study locations. The next slide represents an operational analysis. So we've gone to each one of those 5 locations, and we've modeled how they currently work and how we expect they will work 7 years from now, right? So we've looked at a future year condition with and without the development of this particular project. And the outcome of that analysis is really to assign a letter grade designation based on the amount of delay we expect to occur on an hourly basis, right, over the course of a peak hour in the morning, in the evening. And in traffic speak, really what that means is that what we need to achieve what's considered an acceptable level of delay would have a letter grade designation of between A and D. Anything within that letter grade designation is considered an acceptable operating standard. When you have extended delays, typically at a signal, for instance, in excess of 50 seconds of delay, you'll have what's called a level of service E. So you start to get into that yellow zone where it's not comfortable to wait 50 seconds to be able to move through an intersection. Delays in excess of 60 seconds, for instance, or a minute or more, are classified as an F, right, failing condition. In our case, and in every case, we're in the green zone. We're showing that, for instance, at the intersection of Washington and York Street, which is in process of being signalized and improved with that additional lane on York Street, that intersection with additional growth, right, 7 years of growth, and the project traffic will operate at a level of service B or better during the weekday morning peak hours, and a level of service A during the PM peak hours. The driveway itself, which it's not signalized, will not be signalized, will operate with very modest delays at B or better during peak hours. As we look at the York and Pine Street intersection, it is also at B, right? And so you'll see a trend here that we're well within the green zone of acceptable operating standards. As we move to the end of Pine Street, we're also aware that there's an improvement initiative there ongoing by the town. There's a formal design plan that will improve the lane arrangements at that location. That location, during weekday morning peak hours, will operate at level service B, and will continue at B with the project in place. In the evening, there are slightly longer delays, but still well within acceptable standards of D. And this is for the left turn and movement in particular from Pine Street onto Pleasant Street. That doesn't change as a result of the project. That D remains a D. And then as we move to the signalized intersection at Turnpike Road, which is in a location that will actually be improved by Amazon. There are mitigation commitments there to add a lane and modify the signal timing adjustment. That location will be at a B and will remain at a B with this project in place during either of the peak hours, morning or evening. So in every case, we're demonstrating that there's no change in operating level or standards, and all of those locations will operate well within acceptable standards. And finally, to wrap this up, our next steps are to formalize what I've just described to this board. I've got a draft version of that, but we want to make sure that we obtain any input from working sessions to finalize that, and then to submit that as a final version for peer review and moving forward. So glad to answer any questions.
I have questions. First question is, why wasn't the intersection of Central and Pleasant included in your analysis?
Well, again, we've had a conversation with peer review to highlight what peer review and MDM believe are the most impacted locations, and typically those are selected on the basis of two criteria, and this is common to the traffic engineering industry. Locations that sustain an increase of 100 or more vehicle trips per hour in the aggregate, or that sustain a change in volume of more than 5%. None of those locations, notwithstanding we've included Pleasant at York, for instance, and Turnpike, none of those locations actually meet those standards.
Based on what?
Based on the projected level of traffic increase for the residential project. I mentioned the 120 to 126 vehicle trips that are being generated. 45% of those would be inclined to go on the Pleasant Street corridor. When you look at that number of vehicles, it's roughly about 60 vehicles or so, slightly more than 60, but no more than 70. That change in volume falls below the standard of 100, and it also falls below 5% change in the amount of volume that currently exists on any of the locations along that corridor. So that was the basis for selecting the study areas. The peer review consultant, GPI, is the designer of record for the Pleasant at York Street intersection, and are also familiar, having peer reviewed the Amazon project, I believe.
Pleasant at Pine.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
Pine.
yeah, I just want to make sure,
Yeah,
because you
sorry.
said that twice.
There are a lot of P's in these.
Yeah.
Yes, you are correct. Right, Pleasant at Pine. So they're the designer of record there. They're very familiar with the area. They're familiar with the Amazon project. They're aware of all of the intersections that exist in this area. And it simply was not a location that was deemed to be necessary for evaluation.
One last question, focusing on Pleasant, Pine, and Central. A building is going in, apartment complex on 139 with about 43 units. Right now, the traffic will back up on Central all the way to Pine on many days. Clear days, not weather-related. Today, and it was before when that study was done for that project at 576 Pleasant. I can't fathom how these numbers are so low considering what we, as people in this town, have seen. I spend a lot of time down that neck of the woods. And I'm really having a hard time believing the results that you show here.
Right, and that's precisely why peer review will be involved with this process. We're aware of other studies that have been done within the last year, actually, that include residential mixed-use developments along Pleasant Street that we looked back at and looked at their volume conditions, some of which date to 2025. There has not been a substantial difference from there to here. And there, in none of those studies, an indication that there are extensive delays or deficiencies. It doesn't mean, and I don't mean to dismiss that there may be queuing that occurs or anything like that. That happens, you know, it ebbs and flows. I absolutely suspect, and you live here, and I don't, so.
As you said, you did an analysis in the springtime when school was in session.
Yes.
The analysis that was done on Pleasant Street for that other apartment complex was done without school in session. And so there were some numbers that weren't taken into full account. And I have my feeling this trifecta of Central, Pine, York, 138, and Turnpike is going to create a big problem. Considering we have a trash company down the street that's going to increase that load. So I hope all that was taken into your analysis.
Yes, what we do in the study is project out 7 years, and we identify projects that have undergone approvals, and it included those as what we call background projects. And so, you know, the use of a 7-year growth rate in combination with projects like that have been included in the study. Again, that will be subject to a peer review process. And I will revisit the Central Street issue that you mentioned, right? Part of the reason we're having a working session is
I think it's interesting because the traffic analysis was done by the applicant on 576 and then peer reviewed by the GPI. Their assessment was very thin in terms of saying yes to the original analysis. It was really suspect in many of our views. So bear that in mind.
We'll thank you. I've got that noted.
Thank you.
Hello, Bill. Can you go back to the slide that was showing the negative change in volume? I'm kind of confused on the way that slide was showing at the different intersections of what you were trying to get at that point. So right here in the negative percentages, what are we trying to, what's this chart trying to show, and what are we giving in negative percentages?
Yeah, right. So those, what you are viewing as a negative is actually an approximate signal, symbol. So what that's intended to show, and it doesn't present is clearly, you know, it's more clear now that it's zoomed in. That shows the relative percentage change in volume for particular sections of road, right? So for instance, on the very left upper corner, that would show the Washington Street corridor, and it's shown to have an increase in volume of 44 vehicle trips per hour. That's two-way volume on Washington Street during a weekday morning peak hour. That 44 vehicle increase represents a 2.8% change over the existing volumes there today. And likewise for PM, 42 vehicle trip increase is a 2.4% change, et cetera. So that, does that answer your question?
Yes, I took that sign as a negative. I didn't realize it was an approximation. So when we're talking about percentages, it's nice to say it's nice and low, 2.7, but when we talk about, and getting back to Rick's point, when you start getting out towards Central and Pleasant Street, 44 vehicles in an hour where we have traffic that's already backed up through that intersection. Now you're going to add 44 vehicles into that 1 hour. That, you say it backs up for an hour, you add 44 vehicles into that queue, and it's going to actually increase that backup for even further. I'm just trying to get a handle. I understand percentages sound small, but these streets are small. When you start adding that many vehicles into that becomes a lot of vehicles per hour. Mm-hmm. Even though there's a lot going through there per hour, but you start adding in because the vehicles are small. Because the queue right now is bad, and there's added buildings going to go in, that queue is going to continue to get worse. So I just want to make sure that you do, like you said, you would revisit that. I think that's something that does need to be revisited.
Yeah, and I think the range of increases that we're talking about, which essentially have been initially vetted with GPI to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of how we're estimating the trips, how we're distributing the trips, what counts we're relying on for baseline conditions. 44 vehicle trip increase represents one vehicle every couple of minutes, right? And so, again, in traffic speak, it is quantifiable for sure, right? And we can put a number to it. But, from the perspective of it changing operations, at that level of increase, one vehicle every couple of minutes, it's not likely to have a material consequence to traffic. It's common for traffic to ebb and flow on any particular day. Mondays are typically heavier volume days than a Friday. Tuesdays, and Wednesdays tend to be a little more standard, right? So there's going to be an ebb and flow depending on which day of the week we looked at and the exact hour of the day. So all of that will be subject to the peer review process, and we understand very clearly what the concern is. But again, we're not taking any credit for the hospital and the infrastructure that was originally planned when that hospital was open.
Bob, if I may, just to make sure I understand correctly, the MassDOT improvements occurring at Washington and York have also not been accounted for in the delays or in the operation. Is that correct?
The future year conditions in the traffic study assume that those improvements will be in place. They're being constructed as we speak.
Within the timeframe,
And certainly by the time this facility would open, those improvements will have been well completed. So we are assuming that under that scenario.
Peter. A couple of questions I have, and one of the questions probably may go back to Bill, is Eversource was supposed to be adding a traffic light when they got the project for the substation there, the distribution points. And I believe, and correct, I could be corrected if I'm wrong, the issue came about is the line of sight. As you come from Stoughton heading into Canton and you're dropping down where York Street is, that was one of the reasons they kind of held back on putting a traffic light there. So I don't know, you'd have to check on that.
It's, the thing is, the traffic light's been approved. It's actually the work that's being put up there now includes having a traffic light. Somehow that sight line disappeared in the conversation of everything. So we're back to having a light at that intersection. And one good thing is that right-hand turn coming up off of York Street. I think that's going to help a lot of traffic in that area. But we are now, after, 15 years, getting that light, so.
Okay, like I said, it was just something that I recall from past projects.
Well, you're 100% correct. That's why they didn't put it in, but now all of a sudden they're saying they can do it, so.
Okay, the other,
The MassDOT project there has widened that roadway quite a bit and trimmed a lot of the vegetation. So a lot of those things have been taken into account with that
Okay.
project there.
all right, so it's been a deeper dive into that. The other thing is going on to York Street, I don't recall the times, but there's a truck exclusion on that street. And my question goes back to, if you go to the set of lights and a truck was coming from Canton, coming into Stoughton to take a left onto York Street, my question is, the vehicles coming from York Street onto Washington, is that intersection, it should be hopefully wide enough to handle that.
That's right. And Mass DOT would only approve a geometric design that accommodated those types of vehicles. Even if there's a truck exclusion, it would not apply to trucks that need to make deliveries along the route.
Right, and I understand that, but I'm just saying, a truck driver coming along.
Yep.
It may be something to look into about, the residents probably wouldn't have a lot of heartburn about it, is extending that as a complete truck exclusion on that road, but that's a different story for a different day. The question I have is, you have a lane coming from Canton into Stoughton, but taking a left onto York. What do you anticipate the queuing how many cars, how many vehicles do you intend on being queued up for that set of lights?
The, the traffic report has a very detailed accounting of not only delay, but vehicle queuing. Because there's going to be an additional lane on the York Street approach, it will substantially reduce the amount of green time that's necessary to properly process vehicles on York. Most vehicles that are headed toward Washington Street on York are right turns. My recollection is there are fewer than 80 left turns an hour versus the more than 200 that want to make a right turn. So one of the driving factors for the geometry was adding that right turn lane to allow that to proceed more efficiently and to reduce or minimize the amount of queuing. I don't have an exact number on queuing. It's in the report, and that's a detail that we'll absolutely get into as part of a site plan review process. The peer reviewer will also be looking at this during this
Because my
process.
concern is, you're adding a set of lights,
Yep.
and what happens is, now, I mean, I have at times taken that left turn to head to where I live,
Yep.
and I know it's been a challenge, but what's even more of a challenge is continuing up to Washington Street to take a left onto Central Street to head where I live. So it's almost, if a set of lights there may make it easier, so now you're gonna have more vehicles choosing to take that route.
Yeah. I just scanned over what the results are, just to give you a sense.
Right.
And the queuing here is measured on average, if you're on York Street, for instance, westbound left, you're going to have a vehicle queue of roughly 2 vehicles on average. If you're on Washington Street traveling through, you're going to have a queue that's roughly 7 vehicles. And similarly for depending on the time of day, the southbound left turn movement itself is only going to have a queue of less than 2 vehicles. So the signal itself, what it's attempting to do is balance the amount of delay that happens there so it's fair for everybody. But the primary benefit here is going to be that anyone who wants to make a left turn from York onto Washington is going to have a much easier time doing that. And the additional lane will allow queues that happen today
Yeah.
to disappear.
Okay. There's
so
no, like,
it's- yeah.
what I see here is a case of where in the morning you can have more people coming from York Street onto Washington and taking right heading into Boston. In the evening, you have the reverse situation. Now, it actually brings me to another question. Has anybody gathered any information about traffic accidents history for Washington and York Street over the past 4 years, 5 years?
The answer is yes. That's in the traffic report. That location is slightly above average for crashes. There are a number of angle-type collisions in particular that are noted there. One of the reasons for the improvement that is now underway is to address that with the signal so that you don't have a scenario where someone who needs to make a left turn out of York to Washington has to jockey for a gap in traffic. They'll be given a dedicated gap by the signal to do so. So the signal operation, the widening, and other features are going to enhance the safety of the intersection relative to today's condition. So that has been looked at, and we believe was also fundamentally one of the reasons that the improvement is what it is now. That
Will
it's
make more sense. Thank you.
So thank you very much, I appreciate that. So can we move on to the rest of it? I think what I'd like to do now is just make sure that the traffic presentation gets reviewed by GPI, and then we can kind of get more in depth to it, if there's more in depth after we review it, and we've had a chance to review it. I think that'd be a better approach from this point here. Thank you.
Dan, I did want to comment, this is Bill, to Mr. Terry's comment. I provided, one of their engineers reached out to me and provided them with the site plans for the 576, the traffic report for 576. What the traffic engineer calls Amazon, which is actually Stoughton Logistics, not Amazon.
Maybe he knows something we don't.
And he should probably not call it Amazon in the future. Just call it Stoughton Logistics. provided them with the Stoughton logistics plans, the Stoughton logistics traffic study, and we also, what was discussed, given to them, I gave them the preliminary site plans for the church that, the church bought the 12 acres right next to 576. And I had an in-depth, email with their traffic engineer, and I said, you have to include this. While this is a pre-app and they have not submitted, they're submitting a 2,000-seat church. They spent several $1 million and bought this property. They are moving forward. So I told them that, they needed to look at accounting for, that was a project. They wanted to know all the projects, and I was adamant that you need to look at this as if it was a project.
One quick question Craig might have an answer for. There was discussion at Turnpike Street where the road was on Pete, and is that going to be rebuilt? Is that anything going, because that needs to be wider there, too.
Yeah, DOT came up with a design plan that sort of had a bypass road, so the section that's settling, they would build a bypass road around it. I think the cost estimate was prohibitive, and they were looking for funding sources. In the meantime, they were studying how much settlement was occurring on an annual basis, and came up with a calculation of how much it was sinking and how long pretty much they had to figure out where they could find the money to construct it. It's a viable project, and they have a solution for it. It's just a matter of getting a funding source, I think, at this point.
Utility poles are gonna be on the ground long before they ever get that thing funded.
Yeah.
Anyway, move on. All right, thank you, Bill. Okay, can we hear the rest of the presentation?
Absolutely. So Bill, if you could just help with the design presentation now. So last month we were here, we heard some feedback on the preliminary site plan that we had shared. We also heard some questions. Oh. No. Everyone's back? So as Bill pulls up the presentation, I just wanted to put some of the updates in some buckets. So we focused on the site plan to make sure that we got all that layout work right. So you'll see some updates on that. We also worked with the team to better define the architectural look and feel. So you'll see some definition on that. We did some more work on the massing and some introducing some one-story structures as well to bring some more diversity to the townhome units. And we also brought some landscape ideas and kind of honed them a little bit more, so you see the type of kind of landscape spaces that we're thinking about. And we'll end the presentation by translating some of the site plan ideas into the zoning, which I believe the end of today's agenda you'll hear a little bit more about. So with that, if you could go to the next slide. So just quickly as to the site location, of course, the site in two parts. And if you go to the next slide again, and here you see, again, the split zoning that the site experiences. The yellow line shows the demarcation of the general business to the northern portion of the site, with residence C or RC in the majority of the site thereafter. The buffers, we spoke at length about the last meeting as well, but they're all there as a reminder of the constraints on the site and the intent of our team to develop where the site has already been developed so that we can stay away from those sensitive areas. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is just a reminder of where we were a month ago. And in this layout of the site, we had the townhome arrangement in the front, you could call it maybe 1/3 or so of the site. In the rear, there were the apartments that were 4 stories. The townhomes were all 2 stories at that time. And we had, you can see the building A and B, that's kind of right in the middle of the site. Building A being a 1-story community building and building B being the first apartment building. There was some discussion at that time of potentially swapping those in location, so we explored that. If you go to the next slide. And this is where we landed after the past month or so of work. Number of the changes include that swap of the 1-story building with the 4-story building, so that the first impression you have of the apartments is softened by that 1-story community building structure. Then in the townhomes themselves, in that loop road for the townhomes, you can see that I think there's a blue color, a blue tone, that represents the one-story or flats style townhome structures. And so you'll see in some of the three-dimensional views that it really starts to bring some diversity of the roof line in this region of the site. And we think that it also offers an opportunity for folks who don't want to have a stair in their unit to have kind of a direct entrance and kind of a flat style living. Another big change, if you were to kind of toggle between the two sites, is that the rear portion of the site was moved to the east. You can't really tell if you scroll, but if you were to advance the page, you could kind of see that the multifamily buildings in the rear shifted eastward on the page. It preserved some of the buffer on the left side, and it kind of relocated the bulk of the development to what's already developed today. So we think that's a meaningful change, though it's hard to tell on this page. And I believe that if you scroll down a little bit, Bill, I think that, yeah, go ahead. We wanted to give a conceptual sense of what that site plan would look like in section. So this is, certainly lacking a lot of detail, but as a first pass. If there's some audio issues, I can swap. Hopefully this is better. Oh, much better. So if you scroll down, Bill, a little bit to just the same slide, but just a little bit lower, there you go. So this is a section that tries to cut through very conceptually and illustrate again what the intent of our design has been, which is to place the height and the 4-story buildings where there's already height and 4 stories abutting the Lux, which is in the northern side of the site. And then to the page right, the lower portion of the site next to York Street to, again, match the height of the 1- and 2-story structures that are throughout the York Street neighborhood. In this section, it cuts through York Street, it goes through those townhomes into the multifamily units, and then it kind of ends up in the Lux beyond. So this is, again, just kind of an illustration. If you go to the next slide, please. We zoomed in a little bit more so you get a sense of if you're that little blue little human walking on York Street, what you might experience, right? So you have your residential buildings and other homes kind of to the right of you. To the left, where that property line begins, I want to scroll a little bit to the right if you can. There you go. So the intent is that your experience as you're walking along the frontage of the parcel is that you have a landscape experience with potentially some berms, some hills, and some planted areas before the townhomes and kind of the private spaces of the townhomes would be encountered. Then beyond that, you have 2 or 3 other layers of other townhomes, and then the multifamily and the clubhouse begins thereafter. So we think this is just helpful to understand, if you're looking at a 30-acre site, it's hard to digest kind of what your experience is, but if you're that little person walking on York Street, that's going to be your experience that's felt right around you. So I think the next couple of slides show a little bit more in 3D what this experience will be. Great. So now imagine you're on York Street again. You've just turned on from Washington Street and you're driving or walking down the street to the east. And this is your view to the left. This is the frontage of the project. We have a meadow type of concept for the initial open space at the front of the project, and then those are the townhomes that you see of 2 stories and 1-story structures that are kind of intermixed throughout. Next slide, please. Once you encounter the entrance of the project, that's where you'll see, more of the trees that exist. You see 2, 3, 4 different townhome structures in front of you. And then just beyond that, I think you can see with the landscaping and the trees beyond, you start to see peaks of the community building, and then even further beyond that is where you see the first peak of the multifamily structures. Next page, please. Once you go up the driveway and turn left, this is where you'll see the townhomes and the loop road that surrounds the townhomes. No worries. Very busy. All good. Next page, please. And this is the last image I'll leave you with as far as the design of the townhomes and the work that the design team has done on this. I think Jay will talk a little bit more about some of the other imagery and the landscape concepts that we have for the rest of the site.
Next slide, please. Sure. Good evening. My name is Jay Szymanski. I'm an architect with TAT. We're the architects for the project. And I just want to go through, these are not images of buildings that we propose here, but they're precedent images. So they're similar types of buildings, similar style that we would anticipate to be designed here as we further the design of the project. So in here you see 3 different building types representing the 3 different building types that we have in our project. On the top left, we have a townhome style building, and you can see those have their own individual garages with driveways in front of them. Just below that, on the bottom left, is an example of a community building. So these are 1-story buildings. They include fitness centers, they include resident lounges, places for the community to gather together. On the right side of that, on the top, is another example of a community building. Again, a slightly different architectural style, but still a 1-story building. And below that, on the bottom right, is an example of a multifamily building. So these are the buildings that are proposed for the rear of the site. Next slide. So again, another series of images of similar style buildings. Top left is a multifamily building. Bottom left is a townhome style building. And then the 2 images on the right are 2 different community buildings. So we anticipate buildings of these styles to be used on our site as we develop the architecture.
On the 4 stories, you don't have any basement units? The first floor is like ground level and then goes up from there?
That's correct. No basements here.
Is there underground parking or anything, or just?
Nope, all parking is at surface. And we do anticipate having some at-grade direct entrances into units, so even on the multifamily building, you would have kind of the feel of a townhouse where on the ground, you'd have direct entrances into ground floor apartments.
And what about the residence storage? Like, did I see you were planning on storage units, garages?
So around the perimeter of the parking lot on the rear of the site, we do have some single-story garage spaces. We have 40 in total, and those are spread out around the perimeter. It also works to provide a little bit of buffer from us to the neighbors as well. So again, some of the landscape ideas, if you scroll down a little bit, Bill, sorry. Nope, the other way. Just so you get the title, yeah. So on the top left, we're fortunate that we have some really mature trees around the perimeter of the site, and that's going to act as substantial buffers from us and our residential neighbors. Where we don't have that, and where we need a little bit more buffer, stay up at the top there. We anticipate adding some berming that you see in that image, and also some evergreen planting. So again, to beef up some of that buffer where we need it around the perimeter. Lower left. So this is an example of some shade gardens. Again, it's a large site, it's a lot of green space. So we anticipate using some different landscape styles throughout the site. So this is one idea of kind of a shade garden. And then on the right side, there's the top image is kind of a meadow. Esther mentioned that green that's just adjacent to York Street. We anticipate some sort of more natural meadow look there. And then the bottom image is kind of a pollinator garden. And again, these will be sprinkled throughout the site in smaller areas to break up the landscape, but also to provide different experiences as you walk throughout the site.
Is there any ponding on the property, like pockets of, I know there's a stream that runs in that area, so.
So there are wetlands on the site, but it's outside of the property that we're developing.
So I think now if Peter, you could come up. We wanted to translate some of these concepts in the site plan and the design that you've seen into the zoning effort that we're also pursuing in parallel, working together with Bill. So if Peter could come up, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, and Peter Tam of Goulston and Stores on behalf of Berkeley Garb. Sure. I'll be very brief because I appreciate that Bill has got this scheduled subsequently in terms of your working session on the overlay. But we thought it was important to, as Esther describes it, translate the site plan to what we'll be working on together, which is the zoning. And I think that the concepts I think that we'd like to note is that kudos to the board for seeking, for instance, the traffic assessment early on, before the zoning is even adopted. So that gives you sort of proof of concept that this site can support this product, right, this use. We want to do the same thing in working with you on the zoning. So the site plan that is evolving and continues to develop and be refined with your input, you're going to want the assurance that that is the site plan that is developed. So the rules that you establish through the overlay zone will be tied together with that site plan. So when you adopt overlay zoning here, you're establishing the rules that provide the flexibility. And those rules do provide for three things. They allow for the use, they create the bulk and dimensional requirements, right, that we'll need to comply with as we advance this to site plan. And it will also establish the framework by which we have to then pursue through site plan. And so, along with those rules, what we're anticipating is that you will also be vetting and approving the site plan. So they're going to be tied together so that what you see is what you get ultimately in terms of what is being developed. In terms of thinking about this as an overlay, we understood from last session that you had put a lot of time and work into the planned residential district. And so I think we also understand that this could be a model for other appropriate locations, whether they be for housing or for other redevelopment, for growth and economic development. And so we're conscious of that in working with Bill initially, that these rules and this framework that we're creating, you will be able to, in the future, if you want to, identify other sites and use this framework to then tailor it for a subsequent site, if that's appropriate, or not, ultimately. It would still require town meeting. And then ultimately, the master plan that we're working on, that you will ultimately adopt with the zoning, if it's approved by town meeting, there will be a detailed and comprehensive site plan approval. And that's where Bob Michaud's traffic is ultimately thoroughly vetted. All of your requirements are ultimately implemented as part of those conditions of site plan approval. So that's it, essentially. We want to keep it simple, and we really appreciate the support and
Well, that's
cooperation.
basically how we operate anyway, other than with this now, town meeting gets involved. So everything that comes after town meeting, we would normally be doing anyway, so. So it's understood.
If you don't have it set up before town meeting, it's not going to happen.
That's right.
Oh, no, so I think, I understand your point, I agree with you, and Paul, the same thing. We are going to review the overlay district, and I think the points you're taking here are well taken, and we'll take how the schedule is going to work and what that's going to do when we deal with the overlay district at the end of the meeting. So I'd like to let that conversation happen until then, and then we can kind of go forward with them, and you're welcome to stick around for that part of it. But I just don't want to kind of mix apples and oranges right now if we can.
No, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So is there anything else that you are looking to present for this at this point in time?
Well, I think just in terms of, I can appreciate that the zoning conversation is going to result. I think one of the principal goals that Esther has been guiding the team on is to establish an overlay that fits neatly with the site plan, but that also provides protections that either meet or exceed your existing zoning rules. And, you know, we're happy to be part of the conversation at the end of this session. But for instance, you saw those images of just to give you one example, the front yard off of York. That's a substantially greater front yard than would be required under the RC zoning. And so we can offer that and work with you to establish that as a default requirement, so that in addition to the site plan, you have a more substantial front yard requirement. We think that's an important part of this project.
Okay. I agree, but again, that's part of what we're going to talk about at the end of the project, the end of the meeting. So I'd like to try to keep that part of it to that end of it, and then we can continue on. I appreciate your presentation on that, and I think that's partly what we're doing going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, board members.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to continue on with the meeting now to go to item number 4. We have a continued public hearing for a special permit case file number SPP 26-003 will be held to petition of the applicant, property owner Charles Dow, ORE Associates, Inc., 333 Washington Street, Suite 203-4, Boston, Mass. 02108, represented by SciTech Engineering and Environmental, for special permit under section 6.4 and a stormwater management permit per town code, chapter 159, for the non-permitted clear cutting of property. The property is located on the west side of Turnpike Street in the 1700 block, approximately 100 feet north of the intersection of Turnpike Street and Cabot Place. The property is split zone neighborhood business and neighborhood residential suburban CRC zoning districts. This has been continued from June 11th. So can we have the applicants and Bill with your updated where we are on this now?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Steve Giosa with SciTech Engineering, representing ORE Associates and Charles Dow on this particular project. As the board recalls, we did make an initial presentation several weeks ago to you, and after that meeting, we have met with the Conservation Commission. We had filed a notice of intent to review the project, given the fact that a portion of the work falls within conservation jurisdictional areas. The commission gave us some initial input on the project, and we did receive a detailed review from Mr. Conlon, which supplements the review that was completed by engineering and Craig's folks over in engineering. So as a result of those comments, we have a number of changes we need to make to the plan, but we, as a starting point to address those comments, one of the requirements of both engineering and conservation is that we complete a soil evaluation in the vicinity of the proposed stormwater mitigation basin. So we have scheduled that test pit to be completed by a licensed soil evaluator and witnessed by engineering. That is now scheduled for next Wednesday, so we can get that piece of the puzzle complete. That will allow us to fine-tune any of the stormwater management features that are required to mitigate for the clearing that has occurred. And again, there were a number of comments from Mr. Conlon that dealt with details on the plan, clarifying a few items. Nothing overwhelming, but we do need to address all of the comments from both engineering and conservation, which we will initiate after next week's test pit. I spoke to Mr. Roth in his office a week or so ago, and we discussed the potential for mitigation plantings that will be required to offset some of the clearing that has occurred. And we talked about creating a buffer zone of replanting zone that would coincide with the piece of the property that abuts residentially zoned land. And so when you look at the drawing on the board where the arrow is now on the north side, and then that 90-degree angle and coming down the the west side of the property to the south property line. All of that is bordering residentially developed property. The houses for those lots are quite a distance away from the site, further to the west, and there are extensive wooded areas there, but on the subject property, the applicant's contractor did clear to the boundary line. So what we have proposed, after my consultation with the client, is a 30-foot strip that would be not regraded. It would remain with the existing topography. We have, I've discussed this with the client. He's agreed to contract with a licensed registered landscape architect to get a landscape architect to select appropriate species and density to create an adequate revegetated buffer along that strip. And then after that strip, which we would keep in its current grading or topographic configuration, we would stabilize a little bit of the site up in that northwest corner, right there where Mr. Roth is pointing. And it's a little different from what we presented the first time. It's actually significantly less grading of the site. We thought it would be better at this time, where we do not have a specific tenant going into this site, that we minimize any land alteration, but we did want to establish a more stable grade, and we know we're going to have to create sort of a terraced approach to this site. So we've limited the grading to that corner of the property. The plantings along the residential zone, which we will present a detailed planting plan at a future meeting. Conservation originally had planned to reconvene on this project in August. However, due to scheduling issues, the commission cannot field a quorum, so they have continued that particular hearing to September 10th. So we will be back before Conservation the next time in September. One thing that the commission did vote on, if you remember, the driveway in the front coming off of Turnpike Street was previously approved by both this board and the Conservation Commission. We're looking to modify that, pull some of the grading away from the wetlands area, and we think that's an improvement over the original design. And we requested an amendment to the Conservation's order of conditions, and they're okay with that area being treated as an amendment, and they will review it as such. However, we also rolled in the clearing in the back and the stormwater mitigation associated with that area into the same notice of intent filing. We did that because most of the communities we work in like to have all of the work covered under a single conservation permit. The commission here in town felt that it was appropriate to separate out the clearing project from the entrance project that had previously been approved. So what we're going to do is file a separate application for the clearing and the mitigation associated with that, and maintain the request for an amendment to the front entrance drive, and the commission gave us that direction as a vote of the commission at the last meeting. Other than that, the commission did not, from a conservation standpoint, have any significant input for changes to the design, and so we'll address Mr. Conlon's comments and then refile with conservation to have both hearings on the September 10th agenda for them. So that's sort of where we've brought the project since the last time we met, and tonight we were just looking for some supplemental input from the board.
Okay, so couple of things. When we spoke the last time, we had had this area regraded to the upper left-hand corner of the plan, but what we spoke about was replanting the entire residential area back to what it was, the residentially zoned area back to what it was at that point in time, and then you weren't going to grade that because we had no idea what you're putting in here, and what the intent is a commercial project. So unless we go for a special permit in the future, you wouldn't be able to be onto that residential area with the commercial project anyway. So that was going to get retreated, and then we were going to come up with a mitigation cost or assessment of what was cut down in the commercial area for the amount of trees that were associated with that area to contribute to our tree fund in the town. I believe, and if somebody get me wrong, but those were some of the conversations we had at that time surrounding this. I like the plan you come up with, like buffer zone and everything else, but I think we're kind of ahead of the game because we don't even know what you're putting there to put a, that type of a buffer zone in without just, let's bring the site back to what it was and then come to us with a plan at some point in time. So at least for the residential area, the commercial area, we can kind of maybe, get that grassed over and stabilized and to be used, but that area there, we need to get into a mitigation for the amount of trees and stuff that were removed without a permit, without work being authorized at that point in time.
Okay, I think you're right. We did talk about potentially funding some off-site mitigation that would be contributed to the community. We have not obviously advanced that discussion either with Mr. Roth or you, the board. As far as the replanting of the area that's been cleared on the site, again, if the applicant had followed the rules, and I can't make excuses, he didn't follow the rules, did the clearing before obtaining a permit, it's likely he would have gotten permission to clear significant portions of the site. We'll leave it at that at this point. Since you don't have a plan before you, you really can't make a final judgment on that. So revegetating the main body of the site, I think would be throwing money away, and it would be better served to head towards a final landscaping scheme that provides the buffering, gets some restoration, potentially gets some funding for plantings in areas off-site that might be more appropriate to invest in.
Again, we're not talking about it, we're talking about a portion of the site. We're not talking about replanting the entire site. What I talked about was the residential area, not the entire site. So you'd stabilize the rest of the site and seed it, but what I'm talking about replanting is the residential portion of the site. That's what we discussed.
The triangle, right?
That triangle piece.
Okay.
In order that, because we don't, unless we went for some sort of special permit, you're not building a commercial building on that piece of site. Unless you
No,
get a rezone.
but I don't think there's a prohibition on if an applicant came forward with a plan that required grading of that area as part of the plans for the
There may
site.
not be, but the plan, you never gave us the opportunity to have that discussion. The owner did not give us that opportunity to have that discussion. I don't think that there was any, I'm not sure what the intent was or why he would come in and clear cut a site, but there was never a discussion with us about what he may or may not do. So whether we would allow that or not allow that, that's all speculation.
I agree with you. So we'll bring in the landscape architect. I understand you're looking for some additional plantings or plantings in that triangular piece. If that's the direction I'm hearing from the board, I will convey that to the owner and the landscape architect and see what that individual comes up with for a potential scheme.
Okay. And then, like I said, we have a mitigation issue with the amount of trees that were done. And I think Bill and Craig and myself and the members of the board are going to have to come up with a dollar value of some sort that would go towards the mitigation with the tree fund in town and how that, the mechanisms of how that will work, but that needs to happen also.
I understand.
Okay. And also, at the last meeting, there was several members, at least one and a couple of other members of the community were here, and they spoke about the area that was disturbed along their property coming in the entrance driveway. And there was supposed to be discussions with the owner and with those people as to how that land was going to get mitigated and repaired. Now, I know that the neighbors did not want the owner doing the work, but there's a cost involved with them fixing that area back up. So we need to know how that's going to come about also.
Yes, and so I have had 2 telephone conversations with one of the representatives of the abutters. Also, they attended the commission meeting. There were 3 representatives of 7 Cabot's Place at the conservation meeting. They spoke at the meeting, and I also in the hallway of the town hall speaking with them after the meeting. So we are trying to work out a solution that they're going to go with. members had asked us to put together a price for what we proposed for the work done. Several of the other, look to my client, we're going to put it together, I think, a scope of work to the present it to them, but we have communication. They have my email, my cell phone number. I've talked to them regularly since the meeting, but we have talked, and we are moving in a direction, hopefully, to get a solution with them at the same time we work something out with you folks.
Okay, because that would have to be part of the plan that we have going forward, so I want to make sure that that's included in whatever's happening.
I agree.
Is there any other members of the board that has anything they would like to speak about?
It's just that I'm in total agreement with what Dan said.
Okay. Then is there any members of the audience that's here that would like to speak at today's meeting? Is there none? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill.
Hi, Bill.
And I know that you and Paul had a lot of comments regarding it. I want to help give them some direction on, I know we'll talk about reseeding of the commercial area, but you really talked about the triangle and replanting and looking at it. Would doing some of what, like, similar to Stoughton Logistics did with some of the, planting big balled and burlap material, 2-inch and 2.5-inch trees, as you know, and I'm more justice to Mr. Bellevue. That's going to be real difficult to maintain out there. I think that they could look at some evergreens and some larger things, but what about more of a using the smaller material and more like they do for forest management and replanting of forest, and looking at planting a lot of the, seedlings or larger seedlings, but planting a lot of them. I've been struggling with this, as a landscape architect. I've been going, well, it's not irrigated. Planting commercial, significantly large commercial material, I think sometimes might be counterproductive. So, and I was thinking that might be a good route to go. And I wanted to bring that up to the board tonight, because to kind of give them some direction on what they should do.
You
need to.
I feel very strongly. What we did at Logistics Park was nice. They took down 800 trees, and they were going to put back 300. We insisted that they put back large-leafed deciduous trees as opposed to conifers, because carbon is significantly better than as evergreen. And I think the small seedlings that we put at Logistic Park really didn't cut it. And I think we need to go stronger on that, particularly where this borders residential areas.
Yeah. Well, and
in
I think
terms
it's
of irrigation,
I think there's a combination of a balance. That's all I'm saying is, I feel that planting what you would see normally on a normal commercial site, the larger plant material, it's gonna be very expensive, which is immaterial, but you're gonna have a high mortality rate, I think.
not if they bring a water truck on site.
Yeah, and
Well, how are they gonna get a water truck up there?
Well, they got machinery out there before. They can do it again.
I'm just looking at trying to get some direction that if there's can be a combination of both, and maybe it's larger seedlings than just I mean not the seedlings like a Forest Service does, but the larger whips. A whip is a term. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure something out. Paul?
maybe the landscape architect could suggest 15 on, and they are plantable. I mean, if they're not going to do this till the fall anyways, they get and they water them in, and, you know, if we have a little bit of a dry fall, of course, they'll have to go. You know, this stuff will be, still, you know, if they're done properly, they'll grow in there. So, you know, I mean, unfortunately, you know, whips and seedlings and stuff would not cut it, I don't think. You know, bald and burlap, maybe for some trees, and then maybe get to 15 and 20 gallon container plants.
Okay, at least you're giving them some direction. So, would you like them to, you know, our next hearing meeting, obviously we're only having one in August. How about, I would recommend that the applicant request continuance to the 13th, and he may not have a final plan, but at least he can come and say, okay, here's where we are, here's the direction we're going. That's what I would recommend.
They should come in with a complete plan and a cost of what it's gonna cost them to do this, and how they intend to proceed with doing it. You know, I mean, we need to know exactly what their idea is. And we're gonna say, well, yeah, you're almost there, but we would suggest maybe you do this and this. Or we're gonna say, this is a nice plan, we agree with it, and, you know, we're on board. You know, one way or the other. But right now, we have nothing. We have a border area that says, yeah, we're gonna put some native material in here.
Okay.
What native material? How many of these native materials? You know, they haven't told us anything, basically.
Okay, then I guess it's up to the applicant whether he can provide that by then, by the 13th.
Bill, are
The
you saying
13th of August or September?
Well, we have August 13th as our next hearing date, and then the next hearing date after that would be September 10th, and then September 24th.
they have a meeting?
He just
with
said
conservation?
Concom was September 10th, so we're
Correct.
be on the same night? That week?
Yeah, they had Concom is scheduled the same night.
Well, so I'm saying is that do we wait until after the Concom's complete, and then we can bring in that and we can do it all at one time?
Which would be the 24th.
Which would be the 24th.
Correct.
Well, at this point, we're going to get our landscape architect on board, hopefully within the next week. That puts us into the middle of this month. I don't think it's realistic to think we would make the August meeting.
Then do the September 24th.
So the September meeting, if that's the next appropriate meeting, then that's fine with the applicant.
Okay, so the applicant's requesting a continuance to September 24th. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time tonight.
You're welcome. Item number 5, continue public hearing for site plan review on case file SP 26-001 and special permit case file SPP 26-001. Will be on the petition of applicant Day Spring Chapel, Inc., represented by Barry R. Crimmins, Esquire. The site plan review under section 10.7. The applicant proposes to construct a 22,500 plus or minus square foot church with assembly hall and offices with 27 parking spaces, landscaping and stormwater drainage system. A special permit has been requested under section 6.1.9 to section 6.1.6, table of off-street parking, due to reduce the parking requirement from 36 spaces to the proposed 27. A waiver to section 10.6.10 to not provide a development impact report, and section 10.6.10.a to not provide a traffic impact assessment statement has been requested. The project is located at 1076 Central Street, assesses map 56, lots 23, 24, and 25 in general business zoning district. This is being continued from June 25th. Can the applicant come up, please, and state your name and talk about where you are?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Attorney Barry R. Crimmins of 909 Washington Street in Stoughton, here on behalf of the applicant, which is the Day Spring Chapel, Inc. Day Spring Chapel, just so you're aware, is a nonprofit church corporation, and as such is a so-called Section 3 use, governed under the provisions of Chapter 40A, Section 6. I'm sorry, I'm so used to Section 6, Chapter 48, Section 3, the so-called Dover Amendment. So the use is allowed under that provision of the statute, subject to, as it says in the statute and in our bylaw, the ability of this board to impose quote-unquote reasonable regulations. I mention that only to not so much make the board aware, but make others who may be watching aware of the fact that it is classified under that section, and as such, the use is allowed. In addition to this board and the site plan approval, we have an application pending with the Conservation Commission on our notice of intent that was submitted. That is scheduled to be heard at the Concom's meeting next Thursday, July 23rd. I was paying close attention to your discussion on the last matter, and we'll get to this obviously at the end in terms of if we anticipate the Concom finishing things at next week's meeting, which would obviously have a bearing on when we would be looking to continue tonight's hearing with you folks, because obviously we won't be able to close this hearing while that Concom matter is still pending. We were here initially, actually downstairs, but our first hearing with this board was actually back on March 12th. And at that time, it was continued and was subsequently continued a couple more times. We have actually not had a follow-up meeting where testimony was given until tonight's meeting. But all of the members of the board were present at the March 12th meeting. I see that both Dan and Paul are online, so all 5 members are present tonight. So hopefully we don't have and won't have in the future a Mullen issue in terms of any subsequent hearings. But since that March meeting and the input that we received both from staff in the form of the technical review memo, and we just received the second technical review memo last week, and obviously in keeping with the board's policy, we had submitted a response memo to the first technical review memo. Upon receiving the second technical review memo, we have not prepared a formal response, but we will be happy to do so, including if that requires any further plan changes. So there are and were changes that were made since the time of that March meeting. And in a moment, I'll turn things over to Rick Latini, who is our project engineer. And I'm remiss in not introducing my client, the applicant, Pastor David Olawadara, with Day Spring Chapel, and his son, David Olawadara, sitting next to him. Rick and Brian is online. Our traffic engineer, we have since submitted a traffic impact report. So some of the items that we had requested waivers in our original application are no longer the case, including the submission of the traffic impact report, which was done. The other significant change which occurred since that initial meeting, if you recall, there was discussion, and I think it was included in the first technical review memo, about the town-owned property adjacent to us, to our right if you're facing the site, and the potential need for either an easement or a license to be able to go onto that property. We actually, upon further research on the title, discovered that there is a private way, Ruggiero Road and/or street, depending on which plans you're looking at. It's been referred to both ways. But my client, through his deed, has a right-of-way for Ruggiero Road. So we are actually now able to use, and it's shown on the updated plans. So we are now going to be able to use that right-of-way, Ruggiero Road, to provide primary access into and out of the site for the traffic coming in that will go down into the lower-level parking garage. So that's a significant change, certainly, and improvement as well, that provides us with a lot more flexibility in terms of how we're accessing the site. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think I'd like to turn things over to Rick at this time. Let Rick talk about some of the changes that were made to the site development plans. Is Killian on the meeting as well? I think,
Yes, I'm here.
okay.
Barry.
Who is our project architect. We may have Killian address the board as well, but Rick, do you want to talk about some of the changes?
Yeah, sure. Yep, nope. Just starting out, I'm just going to go through the changes rather than go through the whole presentation again, unless someone wants to hear again. I mean, the building's only about 12,300 square feet, so I'll just go to the changes. The primary one Barry just brought up is, if you remember before, we had an entry to the garage and to the site on the right-hand side of the building. It was all together. It was like almost a 40-foot wide curb cut. Now that we found out that we have the ability to use the private way next to us, and this was in consultation with the town, we were able to slide the garage entry into the site. So this is actually better for circulation and obviously better for the visual presence of the garage entry from Central Street. So now we have 27 parking spaces in the garage level, and there's 13 on the surface level, so a total of 40 spaces. We actually shifted the building to the right a little bit. That's west. That's actually west, but it's planned right. What that allowed us to do was we were able to increase the aisle next to the accessible stalls to 8 feet, so they're van accessible. They weren't before. And so we were able to add that aisle, and we were able to pull the edge of pavement further away from the property line from where it used to be. Yeah, if you want to go to the next sheet, I think there's a utility sheet. Thank you. Yeah, so the change in the utility sheet was, first of all, there's a detention system on the left-hand side of the building, and it has a 6-inch overflow. It used to go, it goes across the front yard, and what we did, we pushed that line as close to the building as practicable so we could add more planting to the front yard, including trees, which was requested by the board. We have another detention system that used to be in the front yard that we were able to put to Ruggiero Road. So that treats that area. Both those systems now go to a water quality unit that can appropriately treat for total suspended solids and for phosphorus. We were missing the phosphorus removal last time. A majority of the site, including the whole roof area and most of the paved parking, still goes to deep sump catch basin, then to a water quality unit before going to the infiltration systems. And the overflow to the infiltration system is in the back of the site. It's only a 6-inch. The water services still come in from Central Street. That's where the water main is. One of the things we switched was switching the sanitary sewer from Central Street over to Ruggiero Road, because there's actually an easement there with the municipal sewer. That was requested by the town just to limit the trenching in Central Street. And actually, as Barry had mentioned before, since the last hearing, we did submit a trip generation assessment. As you might expect, the church it's a relatively small generator of traffic, and the main trip generation usually occurs on Sunday, which is, generally speaking, the background traffic volume is the least then. So, I mean, in general, we think there's not a significant change to the local transportation system based on this project. And we do have Brian Bizel, who is a transportation planner with my group, that can answer more questions on that. Yeah, so I'll turn over to the board for questions, and I'd just like to thank the board and staff for responding quickly to our plans and getting us review comments in a timely manner. Thank you.
Did the footprint of the building decrease a little?
Yes, it did. The upper floors did. I think the garage might have been the same, though.
Okay.
Excuse me, Bill, can you go back to perspective of the building and the street, beginning? So the way this is set up right now is that your planters are right out to the right of way for the street and the sidewalk. Now, are you replacing the sidewalk and this whole area, or as it's shown on the drawings with pavers? How is all this working as far as the way your proposed plans are for this whole area?
Yeah, we are replacing the sidewalk in front of the site, that's correct.
With the pavers and things that are shown? I mean, your materials are what they're gonna be shown in these drawings and what we're going forward with?
Is it cement concrete now or HMA? I can't remember.
Probably it presently is asphalt in this.
I was trying to think what was existing. I thought it was HMA, but we replaced it with what you guys want, but I thought it was bituminous, but I could be wrong.
No, I think it is bituminous in that area. So I'm just asking because you're presenting this in a way that, I just want to, if this is what you're presenting or you're doing, because this doesn't match up with what I was looking at in the grading and plan drawings as far as that sidewalk area and how that's all coming together. So I'm just trying to be sure, be positive that's what you're doing going forward, that's all.
Dan, Craig is going to look at, he's pulling the main plan to look, see if it's asphalt. I think that this is the, usually the artist rendering is,
No, I realize that. It's just that, part of this whole thing with what people are looking at when this is artist reservation, we're coming
Right.
into a public way. I think I brought this up at the last meeting, is that we want to make sure that people are understanding exactly what they're getting instead of, well, we have a sea of asphalt out here and not what we're actually seeing out here. They're two different things. Because the plantings, what you're doing here, the amount of change you're having to the site and the amount of concrete and paving, we're getting very little planting out along the street for what this whole area is worth, and that's why I'm.
yeah. And
kind
the
of
other thing
bringing
is,
that up. I mean, these planters are fairly small in relative to the size of the building and then what's happening to that area of the town, so.
yeah, and I don't believe we want pavers for the sidewalk. That's not maintainable for us.
Actually, the plan calls for Bitconk sidewalks, and I thought that
So
was
you-
the case.
so
I thought that
it's
was the
all-
case
it's
because
all
I
the
do have
way-
a comment requesting concrete ramps and tactile strips at the driveways. So, yeah, the Bitconk sidewalks match what's on of Central Street.
Dan,
Right. So it's gonna be asphalt all the way back to that retaining wall that they're having there?
Yes.
Basically, we have a whole area instead of plantings, like all this platform. Why can't that be a side of the stairs coming up and just a landscaped area? Why do we need that in that area?
I'm not sure if the landscape, Bertha, are you on? I was going to discuss it with our landscape architect. We can look into making that a plant. That's the way I actually showed it on my plans, actually, so. I have to
As not as planters.
I showed it as.
I believe
as
the
an
architectural rendering is a misrepresentation
Yeah, and I
of
think-
of the engineering plan.
I think mine shows, it being open space, not pavers back there.
Bill, I'm looking at this on Google Maps, and it's asphalt with granite curbing.
Yes.
So,
Can we go to the landscape plan?
I'm
Just
going
go
right
down to the
now.
landscape plan?
Yeah, that showed as planting.
in the meantime, Bill, did you send the new updated drawings out to us on July 10th?
No.
The package?
That one there, right there, that shows it all planted.
Yeah, Dan, if you see this,
I see, but this is part of what I was saying, so that rendering really doesn't mean anything again, so. I
correct,
brought
the
that
rendering
up.
is not correct. It
Yeah.
should not show planters. It should show planting all the way to the wall.
I had that, the last time I had that same discussion was about the rendering is not typical of what we're getting or idyllical what we're getting. So basically, these plantings, I don't see, there's no grading. Is this grading increasing like with the stairs so that we're gonna get more of a softness to that wall going up, or is this just gonna be flat back and the plants are gonna try to cover the wall? I didn't see what the grading, go back to the grading plan, Bill, I'll be able to see
Oh, no,
it.
sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty level out there.
So it's all level, so we're just bringing plants. Is there a way that we can kind of soften that wall stuff, maybe terrace or slope up that area and plant it in order that we just don't have that straight up
Is that
concrete
drain?
wall in the background?
Yeah, yeah, they could probably do some berms or mounding in front of the building.
Right.
Soften that up, yep.
Dan, also in the landscape planting, they show planters up on that roof section of the entry of the garage. We don't see that in the rendering on the front page.
No,
Right.
I guess the rendering, we just gotta put the rendering aside for right now and just
Yeah,
deal with
right.
it. I'm just trying to deal with the plan, and that's why, what caught me was when you get the rendering, and I looked at the plan earlier, I didn't see what they had, so I was trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and you approve the plans, not the renderings. You approve
Right.
the elevations, but not the renderings. That's an
I'm
art.
just trying to, my comment is, I'm just trying to soften that area to where that retaining wall is as we're coming up off the sidewalk. You know, we're
And-
not gonna have to see asphalt.
And they're going to have to probably pull the trees up closer because there's a drain line there.
That's fine. Anybody else, the members of the board, have any comments?
They may even have to put like a retaining wall in front to meet up against the stairway to create a planter area so it doesn't get washed down into the, if we berm it up, washing it down into the sidewalks and stuff, so,
Yeah.
consideration.
Probably put one of those, the small concrete curbing.
Just set another
Yeah,
curb
concrete
back
curb
there
along that edge, right?
Yeah.
to hold back the planting material.
All right, anybody else have any other comments?
I just wanted a clarification. This is the first I heard this was under the Dover Amendment?
No, it's always been that way. A church is a Dover Amendment use, so it's allowed as a use. And we have a separate section in our code. You can make reasonable, Barry likes to reiterate every meeting, reasonable requirements of height, both landscape and whatnot. And it's highly litigated on what's reasonable and not reasonable. So, a lot of our comments, are reasonable, in my opinion, because one of the things that the Dover Amendment does not exempt you from is you have to comply with all the Concom rules. So they're going to do that because they're doing Concom. And you have to apply for all of the engineering, drainage, grading, utilities, and all of that. That's not part of the reasonableness, and 90% of our technical review memo is regarding grading, drainage, engineering. I have a couple comments on landscaping, and then the only other thing that we will kind of, once you let us talk, or once we go over our memo, is parking, and we can update you on that regarding the building commissioner. So, but the Dover Amendment, it's always been that way, because it's a church.
No, just the first I've heard of it
And-
on this particular project, that it was brought up.
Yeah, and the only, I did have a comment, is that it keeps on saying community center, it's,
I think unfortunately, as with the prior discussion about the conceptual.
artist rendering,
drawing, right.
and so that probably should be changed, should say Dayspring Church.
Right.
It lends to your Dover Amendment case versus not
The
being
name,
Dover.
the name is to be the same name as the applicant, Dayspring Chapel, Inc.
Yeah, so, but they maybe call it Dayspring
But
Chapel,
Dayspring Chapel,
Dayspring
yeah,
Church,
we'll probably drop the- we'll
whatever,
probably
whatever
drop
they're
the
gonna
Inc.,
call it.
right.
Community center, as I pointed out in my memo, is a little misleading.
Right.
Bill, could you make the comment about what the building inspector brought up about the parking lot? It appears right now, from what I heard, was there up to 40 parking spaces. So the special permit that would require a reduction would be gone anyway.
Well, and I can get into that.
Please do.
I talked to Jack earlier today, the building commissioner, and he, and a subsequent request that I will be sending, well, I was going to send it via email, but I can just do it right now, is the architect needs to provide the occupancy load for the rest of the building. And then we have to talk about uses, what's the, what's the use of the church, the times, those sorts of things. What do they anticipate? But Jack does need the occupancy load for the remainder of the building, because some of the floors, they used to say meeting room or office or whatnot. Now they just say room. So And literally, there's 3 rooms that just say rooms versus are they meeting room, are they offices, or storage? So the architect needs to provide the final occupancy load. We need to discuss that with him to come up with a, what the parking requirement would be based on the code. My sneaking suspicion is that I think you're still going to need your special permit.
My question as far as parking, you know, I asked whether or not you had sent out the updated version because I can't really.
Yes, I emailed the update. There's one of the, I forgot which project, the file size was 60 megabytes, so I couldn't even.
That's the one that is that the one that we had to go to the planning board?
To the planning board. I don't know if is yours the 60 megabyte one?
All the renderings made it.
I had
pretty
trouble
large.
sending it to you, Bill, and then remember Rick sent you the link.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that one or if it was the Canton Street project that had the 60 megabyte file.
So to get back on point,
They are on the website.
what happens is, what I'm looking at, I see approximately 20 benches in the upper part of the church. That's what I'm looking at. So 20 benches, and if you have 40 parking spaces, to me, I question whether or not you have enough parking. And the other question I kind of that came to mind was the fact, this being a chapel, are you going to be doing a funeral service, so to speak, at this facility? And if so, sometimes there's a church down on Oak Street, and there's cars all over the place, you know, for a funeral service. That's kind of like, you could peek out real easy, depending upon who the person is.
So if I may, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the previous speaker, I too had a similar conversation with Jack later this afternoon after Bill's conversation. He reiterated the same things to me that sounds like he talked to Bill about as far as providing a full breakdown of the other space within the building. And you know, Pastor David may want to speak to this issue himself. The congregation is a very small congregation in terms of its membership. You'd be surprised at how small it is, but again, I'll let Pastor David speak to that issue. Unfortunately, for purposes of the traffic assessment, they are based on estimates based on the seating capacity for the facility. So regardless of whether a church is busy or not busy, large or small, it's based on what your proposed seating is. ITE, that's how they determine what the estimated traffic will be. In this particular case, the actual traffic numbers will probably most likely be well below what ITE estimates would suggest they would be. But Pastor David, do you want to?
I don't think, Bill, I mean, Barry, I don't think he's asking about the traffic report.
No,
He's
I'm
asking
not talking
is-
about the traffic report, Barry.
Is the parking
What?
for a funeral or even the parking for a service? I mean, I see many more than 20 benches there. I mean, if you say there was 8 people to a bench, you could easily have 160 or 180 people just in the chapel area. So if you have that, 40 parking spaces don't seem to cut it.
Yeah.
That is the same issue I was trying to address.
Right. Yeah, but there aren't benches on the second floor. This is
Just showed benches there.
this is the main floor.
Right, but it doesn't
Right,
make any
so
sense. The
if you
benches
count the number
there
of
and the benches
benches-
are the-
Yeah.
Well, I guess, until, you know something, this discussion, we could go around until we have an occupancy build.
We're going to do the
building.
We're going to
then
do the
I think we're-
occupancy
we're all-
load and come
We're
back.
all kind of just talking in circles. I don't want to talk for half an hour in circles and not have an occupancy in the building. So if somebody can come up with that, an occupancy for each of the spaces and an occupancy for the church itself, the times the church is going to run, and we have those types of items in front of us, I think we can have a discussion. Other than that, we're all speaking in hypotheticals, because it's the only way we're going to be able to condition the permit and condition what we got going forward. So if we can kind of move on from that so that we can kind of keep the meeting going, that would be good.
We're working on that.
Okay, and the other comment that I have is, I'm not a fan of where you have the handicap parking and the layout of those spots. So, I mean,
I should say, that there are two, I forgot to mention, there are two accessible spots in the garage too, but I couldn't fit the van accessible in the garage though, so.
okay. All right, I think last time I spoke out about the 2 parking spots in the garage, they were pretty far away from the elevator, and if anything, if you're gonna have a handicap parking spot in a basement, you want it as close to the elevator as possible.
That's an easy fix.
Paint.
It's just on the back.
So Kelly, in the garage are next to the elevator now, right?
Yeah,
Before,
can,
but
can
okay.
Can you hear me?
Hear you.
Yes, they are next to the elevator. So the layout of the garage has been changed to accommodate those passes right next.
Again, I apologize about going to the website because it was so big, and I did not. That's on me.
Anything else, Peter?
No, I'm good for now.
Any other member of the board wants to speak?
I have a question. At the March meeting, and a butter who lives in the condo complex behind the site expressed a lot of concern about the wetlands in back there and how they've been inundated with water into their basement units or first floor units. And her concern, and she was very well spoken, I don't recall her name, but she was concerned that we're taking a ranch house, which is probably 35 by 20. Can't hear you. A ranch house that's 35 by 20 with a full basement, I assume, and we're installing, or will install, a building that's 4,700 square feet with a deeper basement to accommodate the parking. So the question is, where's all this water going to go, and how is it going to be handled in regards to the people behind him?
Yeah, actually, well, her problem is, I think, is twofold. I think those basement units might actually be in the groundwater based on our test pits, but we're taking some water and detaining it and slowly putting it in the municipal system. So we're taking some water that used to go to their site and taking it away from their site, the condo site, and what we're sending to the back is we actually infiltrate for the size project, and the outflow pipe is really just a 6-inch pipe for than 10% of the storms, because those systems are pretty big back there, because we had to, the material out there is actually pretty good sand on us. So we had to infiltrate the stormwater to do that. There's a higher infiltration ratio when you got sand on your site, so I think the condition will actually improve. And then part of our plan too is there's been a lot of disturbance in this site. We're redoing the back of that site, because I don't know if there's a construction yard or not, but there used to be a road back there and there's debris, so I think we're actually going to improve the condition overall.
Yeah, actually, I've reviewed the stormwater management system on the site. I think they've done a good job with maintaining the peak flows and providing infiltration, all the things that we require on such a tight site, right? So they found nooks and crannies to be able to take care of that. I agree with the point that the rear of the property is in pretty tough shape, that it's been sort of abused over the years, and there's a lot of debris and things that this process will clean up. Our conservation agent, James Conlon, upon his site inspection, discovered a 24-inch pipe that traverses the property to the rear. It's not shown on this plan, but I bring that up because that's a conveyance that the condominiums and everything to the left of this proposed chapel that are existing now have a primary discharge that dumps out into this property line, and the conveyance of that 24-inch pipe and going through this area that's been disturbed for years, it might be bottled up and holding water, and that's what's causing a lot of the problems that the people in that area are experiencing over the years. So the main goal would be to mitigate whatever's generated from this proposed development, and also ensure that we're able to carry whatever flow is coming from off-site and let that convey to its point of discharge properly, which I don't believe is happening now.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Any other members of the board have anything to say? Is there any members of the public that is here that would like to speak on the project or online? If I hear none, then,
Hi, are you able to hear me?
yes, I can hear you now. Is that Autumn?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's me. So I'm one of the abutters in the condo building.
If you could state
I've
your
ha-
name and address, Autumn, for our
Yeah, for
records.
sure. Do you want me to also put it in the chat?
Just to state it out loud, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So my full name's Autumn Talent Kilgannon, and I live in 53 McCormick Terrace. So I'm in one of the buildings that's just past the lot line for the project. So I appreciate the mention of like the stormwater drainage stuff and everything, because I am one of the folks that lives in one of the partially below grade condos. I do think that even with stormwater systems being better than they used to be, if you remove so much soil and material from the garage, all of that water has to go somewhere. So I don't know if I'm just not understanding whether that kind of research has already been done or not for the project, but do you know that all of the water and all of the soils that are being displaced are actually going to be like not a problem, I guess, is what I'm wondering. And another thing that one of the board members actually mentioned in the March meeting, I was at that one too, is snow removal and snow storage, especially if we end up with a winter that's like the one we had this past year. We had like 10-foot snowbanks in our condo complex, and we have a large parking lot, and we were still like losing parking spaces because of the snow. So there's also that concern. And I also think too that like the nature of having a church is your intent is to grow the congregation, to have more people, to invite more people in, right? So like, I know that the parking space conversation's kind of been paused until the occupancy for the building is like noted, but I do think that we should all keep in mind as this project does move forwards, like, should there be a special permit for the parking spaces rented? Because like, there's only going to be an increase in traffic. Especially as like more folks do continue to kind of come here. And I'm also fairly certain, and like, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the current location for Day Spring Chapel's in Roxbury, Boston, right?
I believe that's where they're incorporated.
Okay.
Their address.
Gotcha.
I don't know. They can, maybe the applicant can explain if they have the current, where their current chapel is.
The current location is Roslindale.
Right. So that's what I was finding as well whenever I was looking into this. So my other concern is just traffic load generally, because there is no consistent public transit option to get from Roslindale to Stoughton. So asking your congregation to move from Roslindale to Stoughton and also asking them to figure out parking on their own, they're going to end up overflowing into our condo lot, into the CVS, into the cemetery, and that like across the street and everything. So I think that that's also something that we should keep in mind whenever we're thinking about like parking situation generally. And I also do appreciate that someone mentioned that the plans are kind of mismatching the rendering, which I do think is also misleading for someone that's just, someone's curious about the project. Seeing the rendering and reading the plans are two different kind of experiences. Yeah, so those are my thoughts. Thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you, Autumn. Craig, do you want to just comment again on the drainage, or do you think we've covered that enough at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I can go through the technical review letter just briefly. I think we've touched upon a number of the items. As I mentioned before, the existing 24-inch pipe that goes across the site needs to be shown on the plan and appropriately relocated if necessary, or upgraded accordingly. One thing I did want to mention, if you look through my technical review letter, we had some questions about the building setbacks It's kind of weird on this particular lot because it used to have a road adjacent to the right side on the plan where Ruggiero Road is shown. That would be a front yard if the road were still there, but now it's a side yard, so the geometry of that lot still keeps the rounding on the side, so it's a little tricky to figure out where the front yard ends and the side yard begins. We've had discussions with the building commissioner, and I think what's shown on the plan now is okay. They show the front building corner having a 5-foot setback to that rounding. That was what I had concern with, but the building commissioner is fine with how that is shown on the plan. I have a lot of minor things for layout and things like that, but one thing I did want to mention was that the west access drive, it has sort of a unconventional geometry to it at the moment, the way it's shown on the plans. I think it would be better served to just provide a 24-foot wide, more consistent driveway to the rear of the garage entrance and allow that front section to be a two-way access, allowing some cars, some vehicles to exit in that direction as well. I think that would serve the property better and allow for a better distribution of vehicles entering and exiting onto and off of Central Street. A couple of comments in my letter about where stop lines and one-way signs should be placed, so we won't get into that. The stormwater, a couple of things on the utility sheet. You're required to have an MDC oil water separator for vehicular access into a covered space in the basement. So that needs to be added to the plan. There's some comments about the dumpster detail needing more detail as types of materials and so forth. And then I think Bill has some comments about landscaping he'd like to touch upon.
Yeah, mine are pretty quick. One of my previous comments was that they put so much stuff on a lot of extraneous information on the landscape sheet. Then they separated out the landscape sheet. And you have a sheet with notes on it. You have area on, let's look at the Paper Reduction Act and try to consolidate those notes on the sheets. You don't need those. We don't need to have it looks like you can consolidate those.
Understood. The landscape architect misunderstood your old comment. She thought she wanted all the notes taken off so it was easier to read the plan. So I think she meant this for the
you basically,
meeting. Yep.
they did a landscape plan on the top of an engineering, on top of the grading plan. That was my comment. And after my second comment, you probably realized that's what it was. But, so yeah, consolidate that. You indicated wooden trash, however, it appears that's the landscape plan and the engineering plan. You're showing a transformer. The landscape plan calls it a wooden trash enclosure. That's just some consistency stuff. And then there's a plant with no label, and it appears it may be a PS. I'm not sure. So look at the quantities. But you've gotten this in, and if your landscape person has a comment or question, and if you have a question, you can always reach out to Craig and myself. Feel free. And then, and then I recommend to the architect work on I'm not going to kick at to the parking. Work on the occupancy load, and I recommend while you're doing that, you can have a phone call with myself and the building commissioner so we know we're all on the same page on exactly what he's want. Okay, that Kilburn?
Yep. We'll do
Okay.
that.
And that would be good.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Craig.
So,
So is there anybody else that would like to speak on this project, either online or there at the meeting? I'm hearing none. I'm assuming at this point you are going to ask for a continuance, and would that be to our August or September meeting is what we're looking at this point?
I'm thinking probably the September 10th meeting. I don't think August 13th or,
Yeah, we won't, I don't think we'll, I personally don't think we can approve the first Conservation Commission hearing, so we have to push it to the next one.
Well, the next if you don't meet, you think you're not going to get approval at this next Conservation
I
Commission meeting?
don't think in the first one we will.
Okay, the
Just
next
is my feeling.
Conservation, here's your dilemma.
Right.
Conservation Commission is on September 10th.
right.
So why don't you go to the second meeting in September at this point in time? Does that work for you, Barry?
No. And I can just tell the applicant, one of the things, the engineer and landscape, you can submit email to myself and Craig in August or whenever you do.
Keep things moving.
We can take quick look. You do not need to make a formal submittal. You can email that to us even if you're doing it in September. Don't email it 2 weeks prior to the meeting like a lot of applicants do. If you're done with all of the technical stuff you think you are, email it to myself and to Craig. We can take a look at it to make sure that if there is something, we'll go back and forth versus going back and forth with a technical review memo with this board.
Okay, thank you.
So hopefully the technical portions of the thing can be addressed.
Yeah.
And so.
Okay, so can we go to the second meeting in September then?
I think September 24th would make sense, and then as Bill said, we can be working with he and Craig and Jack between now and then to get, as you said, all the technical stuff in.
So can I have a motion to accept their continuance to September 24th, please? Can I have a motion for that effect?
So made.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see you September 24th.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. Staff.
Item number 6 is going to be a new public hearing. I'm going to recuse myself from this meeting due to a conflict of interest, so that I'm going to take, Paul, you can take over at this point in time, and I'll back out. Bill, if you want to call me or text me when the meeting is over, and I'll step back in for the last part of our meeting.
Okay, I'll send you a text.
Thank you.
Let me read the public hearing. A new public hearing for site plan review, case file SP 26-006, on the petition of the applicant John Spiegel with M&D Corp. Incorporated, represented by JDE Civil Incorporated of Easton, for a site plan review under section 10.6. The applicant proposes to construct a one-story, 22,280 square foot industrial building with 23 parking spaces, a new site entrance, stormwater management, new utilities to serve the site, and site landscaping. The project is located at 305 Canton Street, Assessors Map 43, lots 116 and 117. District. Okay.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Sure. Josh White from JDE Civil. I'm here with Greg Driscoll from JDE Civil. We're representing John Spiegel of M&D Corp. For this project. So as you can see on the plans, this property is comprised of 4 separate lots that are located in the industrial zone. Been this way for a number of years, and eventually assuming the permits are issued and approved for this project, we would anticipate combining the lots into one lot. So jumping ahead to, you see you got the demo plan up right now. Basically, there's a number of buildings on the site right now. They would all be demolished, and a couple of storage containers would be either relocated entirely or off the site or removed to make way for the proposed building. So we've got a proposed 22,280 square foot warehouse building, which has a small portion of office at the front towards the street, and then the main storage warehouse space for most of the building, and then kind of towards the top left of the plan of the building is where the loading dock area is. The back of the site is where the dumpster location's going to be, and then off to the side behind the building is, so basically his operation here, he recycles materials from cars and that sort of thing. And one of the, get to it when we get to the stormwater part of it, but this being a high pollutant load, to eliminate that, you either need to eliminate the use, which is not an option for this, or contain it, or in this case, put some sort of canopy on top of this. So right now, we've got two, he uses 30-yard dumpsters for his kind of operation. So we've got two of those shown on a concrete pad in the back of the building with a canopy over that to eliminate any potential pollutant loads getting into the drainage system. We're showing a new commercial entrance off Canton Street for this project. And then we've got 23 parking spaces proposed to the left of the building. There are potentially large trucks that come in and out to access this, and in order to accommodate that on this site with the building size that we're proposing, we've got 60 feet wide for truck turning area, so they can pull into the site, turn around, and back up into either the bay, the loading dock bay, or just the overhead door on the side of the building near the office space. Towards the end of the plan set, we showed a truck turning plan so you can see that. And we've got the accessible space near the entrance to the building on the side. I think that's good to go to the next plan. So this is our grading and drainage plan for the site. We have basically with the building taking a majority of the site, we had to consolidate the proposed drainage system into more or less one area. So we have a subsurface system here with catch basins with deep sumps catching runoff from the parking lot. The loading dock area is a depressed loading dock, so we have a trench drain at the bottom, a couple feet off the building, just so it's not getting constantly parked on with trucks as they load and unload there, sitting there for a while. So we've got a trench drain there, and that would connect drainage pipes into the system, and before it gets into the system, it would be treated by a treatment unit. We're calling out CDS 1515 models, and we will, there was a comment to provide the sizing requirements for that, so we'll definitely get you that. basically, all the runoff from the roof will be captured from the downspout, the gutters and downspouts, and directed into the system, where it will infiltrate into the ground. The soils were fairly decent here, and we're getting into the sand layer from what we found on the site. So, let's see. You can go to the next sheet, Bill. And this is the utility plan. Starting on the left, the front left corner, we're showing a new underground electric service with a transformer pad underground to the building, a new gas service to the building, and this, as part of this project, we're proposing a sewer extension within Canton Street, which is under review from Engineering and Conservation Commission. We have a hearing for that next week. But basically, this building would connect into the sewer, which is currently shown within an easement on the property. And we've had discussions with engineering on fine-tuning that, as keeping it on the subject property in the easement is kind of the preferred route, less conflicts with utility poles and other underground utilities in the right-of-way. So I think this, keeping it on the property, would still be able to provide Y connections for abutting property owners, whether on the side, the left side of the property, if they wanted to connect in the future, as well as the neighbors across the street of Canton Street. We've got as there are bay doors into the building, we do have an oil gas separator shown as we connect into sewer, and then a request from the water department. We got some comments from them to modify the water connections. And then just the next page, Bill. So this is our landscaping plan that we've shown, where a lot of the site is currently developed right now with either dilapidated houses or gravel areas. A lot of it will be restored with loam and seed, anything that's disturbed. And then on the right side of the property where it abuts the project under construction now at 271 Canton Street, we've got some screen trees planted there about halfway to the property line. That was intentional to basically meet up with their limit of clearing for their project. So the projects are screened from one another on that side. And then a good amount of screening in the front of the building along Canton Street, as well as along the parking lot on Canton Street as well. And then on the left side, towards the back, we've got some more screening there as well. There was a comment to look at the screening between the parking lot and 309 Canton Street. We'll look into what we can do there. There is existing block walls that are they're basically used they're not really retaining much, so they're not really retaining walls. They're more I guess fencing, I guess, would be the best way to, or barriers. So we'll look at that and see what other screening we can do in that area, because we are raising that portion of the site up a little bit. So we'll see if we can maybe just grade that out or add a fence, or if we have enough space to do some plantings along that property line as well. And then, let's see, what else we got? standard details, and then towards the end, like I mentioned, we did the truck turning plan showing the WB-50 getting into the site and turning around to both entrances, the overhead door and the loading dock in the back. I also mentioned the trash, which is the dumpster pad, basically straight in the back, so it should be an easy in and out for the trash removal company. And then we also provided a lighting plan provided by reflex lighting, showing some parking lot lights as well as wall packs on over the doors. I think that's a pretty good overview of the project. We did get feedback from the technical review. We haven't responded yet, but we have a pretty good idea of how we want to respond to that, and everything seems doable, and we'll coordinate with engineering to do another test pit out there, just so they're able to get their eyes on the soil, kind of confirm what we found when we did the soil testing. And let's see.
Craig, do you want to give us a little overview?
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Josh, for your presentation. As you know, we prepared our technical review letter from Bill and I. I'll hit the high points or low points, however you want to look at them. My first, look at the layout on this site was, my first thoughts were, wow, there's a lot of pavement in the front here. Really wide space between the parking areas, and I kept scratching my head of thinking, why is it so big, and is there anything we can do to reduce that? But if one of the last plans that was up on the screen was the truck turning diagram, and that tells the tale of why there's so much pavement out there, that in order to function on the site and get the truck into that parallel loading space, the maneuver room is needed up in that front parking area to turn the trucks around. So I didn't find a way to try to cut back on any of that pavement. So I think the layout in that regard is good. I would like to see a little bit more space against that the abutting residential property. So to the west is a residential use. I know there's an existing fence towards the rear of that property, which screens some of it. It's on the abutting parcel, but I think there should be some sort of fencing, or which is probably most appropriate in that small strip if they can't increase the landscaped area. If you look at the utility plan along that property line, there's also the sewer runs up there. So we really don't want to plant any large trees or things like that over the sewer main. So a fence is probably the most appropriate for that location. Likewise, the plan right now shows concrete blocks running along that property line. I don't know if you're all familiar with that site, but it's a pretty prominent feature that you can see right now.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're proposing to keep them in place, but the difficulty with that is that after installation of that sewer line and then the future maintenance of it, that those blocks will be problematic. So I think we have to have a different treatment along that property line.
Are those there for, say, to prevent trucks from going? Are those there to prevent trucks from going into the residential area by mistake?
Hard to say. I don't know why they were put there initially. It's probably just to define the maneuver room.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're effectively Jersey barriers. They're Jersey barriers.
Yeah.
They're like bin blocks. They're not actual Jersey barriers. They're just big concrete blocks. John, those just to define like a fence, kind of.
To prevent any accidents from trucking.
Mike.
We installed them so trucks.
Identify your name, please, first.
Hi, I'm John Spiegel. We installed those so that, God forbid, an accident happened with a truck pulling in, they would hit the barrier and not the neighbor's yard. And they were also placed for snow, so that we didn't push into the neighbor's yard.
So they serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
The proposed slope of the driveway entrance is 8.3%. It's a little steep for a trucking facility, trucks getting in and out of there. There's no level landing at the gutter line at Canton Street. I think that needs to be flattened out a little bit and provide a level, at least a flatter slope, and hopefully a level landing pad at the interface with Canton Street. We are working through details with the sewer extension. So one of the big benefits of this proposal is that they're extending the sewer west up Canton Street. That area is typically serviced by septic systems currently. There is a pretty large stormwater culvert east of this property, by a couple hundred feet down, that has been a challenge to get sewer beyond. And this engineer has figured out a way to install the sewer beneath the existing culvert and run it up the shoulder of Canton Street. We are looking into the details of that to provide the maximum benefit to all the potential users in that area, and continue to have it a viable service for this project. So
Is that being put on this project to increase that sewer line?
there's no sewer there at all, so
Okay.
they're extending the sewer as a part of this project.
Okay.
Now, when they do that, are they going to put stubs to the residential houses?
So what we're looking at doing, so this project, in order to remain economically viable, is running the sewer in the shoulder. Typically, a policy of the engineering department is to hopefully, whenever we extend a sewer, to maximize the benefit for all the potential users in the area. Recognizing that there is an economic cost to this, we still need to make that feasible. So what we're looking at currently is keeping the sewer in the shoulder for a portion of the extension, and then it goes onto the property itself, because there are other utilities on that sideline. There's overhead utilities, overhead wires, utility poles. It will go onto an easement onto this property, and then it actually runs further up that side property line and services a couple other properties to the west.
So it'll be gravity fed?
Yeah, that's all gravity sewer.
Okay.
We'll have laterals that come out into the right-of-way, but not cross the roadway.
Okay.
We don't have an immediate need for the residential properties across the street, but in the future, as septic systems fail, as they tend to do, the line will be there and available that they can connect across the road.
How many feet is this extension, roughly?
Do you have that total?
I believe it's 575. That comes to mind from, basically it goes from the top of, the closest manhole is at the intersection of Canton and Drake. That's where the sewer comes down and crosses Canton Street, and that's where we're connecting in from.
So it doesn't go far, it doesn't go to Simpson Street,
Yeah,
just to Simpson, okay.
yes.
That's a good stretch, 575 feet.
Yeah. It's a good benefit for the area.
Has any neighbors expressed interest or are they aware that it's going to happen?
Other businesses in the area have, and that's why it extends past the actual building that we're proposing right now, and up the property line as well, because those other businesses in that corner.
My concern is you guys are bearing this cost. Okay.
And they're sharing it with other businesses.
Oh, all right, because it just seemed like a big ask if the town was trying to have you guys do 575 feet. Okay.
There's no rocks in the area, right?
They need the sewer. You know, septic is probably difficult because if you see, the vast majority of their site is stormwater drainage, which is a drainage septic system in essence.
right.
So I think they're partnering with other users that need it.
Okay.
So
That was, that's what I was trying to
I think-
roundabout get to.
I think it's probably not feasible if they were doing it by themselves. And that's the problem why that sewer has not been extended. But it seems that they've been working with some other property owners to make this thing viable.
Okay.
And it's a public benefit to us too, so we're happy to see it.
So that sewer line will only service those people on the north side of Canton Street. Canton runs east and west.
There'll be stubs for people that they would have to connect all the way across the street, but there'll be stubs. Comment
It
from
will be available for,
Okay.
for all, north and south.
Okay, thank you.
The stormwater management system is largely a chamber system under the pavement. It's, you know, we've reviewed it. It's totally capable of treating and mitigating peak runoff. We don't have any issues with that. We do encourage in our regulations the inclusion of LID stormwater management techniques. There is a grass swale on the east side of the building. I think that's a good opportunity for a small rain garden or bioretention cell at the discharge of that swale before it flows out into Canton Street, so we can incorporate that into the stormwater management system. The grading on site and the location of the catch basins that feed into that subsurface chamber system, there's no real overflow connection. There's no pipe to discharge to. So the system is designed to handle the 100-year storm. If it does build up and fail and build up in the parking lot, I see that I think it's going to build up and puddle at the trench drain over by the loading dock. I think it would be beneficial to provide a lower curb at one of your catch basins so that would not puddle up on your site and flow back into the building. We can work through the details of that. Other than that, I didn't have an awful lot of technical comments. Bill has a couple of comments on the...
Yeah, I've got mine.
You got it?
Yeah.
All right. Landscaping?
They're proposing some landscaping within the easement of the sewer. I think it's good not to do that. So I'm recommending they pull those plantings out. I recommend that they do revise the plan. They're just providing some base foundation plantings, and so I'm recommending that they revise plan, provide a deciduous street tree planting approximately 40 feet on center along the frontage, but not within the easement, to provide, more of a street tree frontage, which can be accommodated. The elevation plans are woefully inadequate for what we've seen even on these types of commercial buildings. They're not to scale, they're not dated, they don't provide a description of the proposed materials. The applicant did provide some revised elevations, which I told him just to print and include. I have not really reviewed them. A lot of the elevation plans, like I will let them know, all of all these floor plan things, that's really not necessary. It's really, there's only one elevation, or there's two elevations. We need scaled elevations with the materials of the four sides, and large blank walls, depending on where they are. If it's in the back, that's fine. But I really want to see, the front. What does that look like? And then you have somewhat, this perspective. We just need typical elevation drawings. I can give you examples, but these companies should be able to do it. They've done it. You have provided the materials. You want to look at bronze and the galvanized and that sort of stuff. And then the only other thing that I just wrote a note on, I need a detailed elevation of what this canopy is. I apologize, I did not see that. So what does that look like? How high is it and whatnot? And the board needs to know, because it is a structure. So provide some information on what that is. I believe it's screened from public view predominantly, but we do need it as part of the set, saying, oh, well, here's what it's made of, here's what it looks like, here's the height and whatnot. You're going to have to get it for the building department, so we need to look at that. So my comments are relatively simple.
Yeah,
not a heavy lift. So with that, Paul, we're finished our review.
Yeah, any questions from members of the board?
I just want to ask about the frontage on Canton Street. That's going to be shrubbery along the building and then lawn area?
Well, Paul, what they're showing is just some base here. I'll zoom in. They're showing some base foundation from plantings
Right.
along here.
What I'm getting at, Bill, is the lawn area there. Since it's going to be facing Canton Street, I would suggest that we have them sod and irrigate at least all the frontage.
Okay. For the lawn area. So yeah, but I'm recommending that they.
All along the front there. At a minimum.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have a problems with your foundation plantings. I really want to see, as you know, you come off here 20 feet, tree 40 feet, 40, and then go, come off 20 with your sight distance. Figure out, your sign,
For sure, yeah.
Was there a detail with the sign?
I believe there was on one of the sheets.
Is it a pylon sign or is it a pedestal sign?
It's a pedestal, it's lower.
Yeah, lower to the ground.
Okay. Well, then trees will be up, they can see it. And then just pull, you're trying to screen, obviously, the transformer. And obviously, where you think the transformer is going is your best guess with the electrical. So I know when you install it and it's way over here, in the field we'll say, oh, well, just take your little evergreen screening and we'll just move it over there. But that's how we deal. Transformers, that's just.
Would there be any bollards required around that?
I think it's far enough back from the street where
Yeah.
it shouldn't be an issue when there's no pavement or traffic.
And if it did, the electric company would tell them
Yeah.
they needed it.
Okay.
They pretty much rule the roost on where the things go.
What about air conditioning for the building as,
There's no rooftop equipment, is there?
I don't think we've gotten that far.
I don't know that answer right
That's
now.
what we need to talk about, a roof, if there's rooftop equipment, the elevations, they need to know that.
Sure.
I'm assuming this type of building, there might not be.
you never know. The office space.
Oh, the air conditioning units will be interior or? Okay, and only the office is going to be conditioned. The warehouse is going to be cold and, well, maybe not fully cold, but cold storage type, climate controlled, but to a certain degree.
Okay. So they'll probably have the ductlet, whatever, the
Mini splits?
the mini splits. Just identify your name.
Chuck Camo, the general contractor. The rooms will be air-conditioned, probably with mini splits or standalone unit. The warehouse will have heat because there's going to be a sprinkler system there, so we have to maintain minimum temperatures for that. But that warehouse area will not receive cooling, and there'll be no rooftop units on the building.
Okay. Sometimes rooftop stuff grows. And I'm sure, Chuck, you know how that happens in other projects.
How long has
There's
M&D Corp.
screening
been at
requirements.
this location?
Sorry?
How long has the business been at this location?
78.
Since 1980.
Thought it was a long time.
Yeah. Been around for a while.
Question?
I remember you in Little League.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I have two questions. One, I noticed on the technical review by the town engineering, you received a special permit from the zoning board. What exactly was that special permit for?
So that was to basically demolish and reconstruct, voluntarily demolish and reconstruct the non-conforming expanded warehouse on other than the original footprint. So basically,
Non-conforming lots, so we,
yeah,
even though we're combining the lots, we're still not meeting the minimum lot area in the
Okay.
industrial zone.
yeah.
My second question, looking at your website, you've been there, actually it said 1978, and you're licensed to recycle automotive parts. And your website was very clear in what you typically recycle. Alternators, catalytic converters. What don't you recycle? Like, do you crush cars?
No, we don't crush cars. We don't physically do anything to the parts. We just store them until a company will buy them to either recycle them or to extract the precious metals from them.
Okay, so your business isn't really going to change at all. It's just expanding to accommodate a larger business base.
Correct.
Okay.
And hopefully never work outside.
Thank you. And one last question. I noticed on the plan that Davis, Spiegel lives across the street. Is that one of you guys?
So unfortunately, it's not updated. I own 306 Canton Street as well. My father did own it, but now I own everything.
Okay, thank you.
So, when do you think you can have the revisions to us and address it? Oh, I'm sorry, comments from the public, Paul.
Oh, is there anyone here from the public who'd like to speak on this? Online? Hearing none.
Nope, there's only, Paul's the only one online. So,
Yeah, I spoke up.
yeah. The next hearing date is the 13th of August. And so I really need to know when you feel you can get everything addressed. And
How far ahead of that meeting do you want?
well, they're pretty straightforward. You think 2 weeks prior? Yeah, if we got it 2 weeks prior, we could deal with that.
So that gives us
That's kind of tight.
That's tight.
What's the first meeting in September?
The 10th. Do you want to continue to the 13th? And if you don't get it, then you continue to the 10th?
Sounds reasonable.
Then, yeah, the 10th's your backup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So we need a motion to continue to August 13th, 13th, correct?
yes.
So made.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Second. Aye.
Good job.
All right.
Everybody,
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
I need a break. No, I'm serious. I'm going to tell
Get a beer.
planning board work section, I'm out. No.
I got this late.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break. Dan's got to come back. I need to stretch my legs.
Your motion to start the meeting back up again, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Motion so made?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 It's the second to the last pages. The last pages are the minutes. So this is just a quick work session. I know it's late. I had had a planned residential development district that we were looking at, and I had Horsley Witten do it, this was the basis that I worked on the overlay with. It's typically, it will be an overlay district, and I know as the Peter Tam mentioned that with the Berkeley development, that we need to look at tailoring it. This was my first draft, and looking at it, I have since given it to the two attorneys, and they've identified numerous things that I need to include. They're like, if this was just a bylaw for just a general use, that would be fine, but we need to stipulate, there's a lot of different things that we need to stipulate in there. So what you will see that I present at the first public hearing on August 13th will be significantly different, and it'll be a little bit longer. There's things in there that we're going to need to look at doing. Some of the purpose needs to be taken out because it was for the overall planned residential bylaw that would allow for cluster development. It would allow for starter homes and some of that. So some of that stuff needs to be taken out because the overlay really needs to be tailored towards the development at hand.
A specific project?
Almost, yes.
Okay.
But
So, Bill,
yes.
speaking of that, again, getting into what they were saying earlier, if we're developing this for the specific project, then the overlay district can't be reused in other areas, and we're going to be developing new overlay districts for other areas of town in order to be able to do the same thing, if that's the process we're looking to go through. Or do we do this once somehow that it's not specific projects, but the projects, all the projects are going to meet a certain criteria for the overlay district? I think that's maybe where the misunderstanding in my mind is with the way that this is being presented. It's being presented as if we're, we need to tailor our work to what their project is, but I'm not sure that that's really the way that we should be going about this. We should be going about this in a way that helps us, and then that their project, it may be that it fits their project, but the project has to fit into what we're looking for as a town, not what that particular project. Unless we're doing, unless every project's going to become a specific overlay district on a per project basis.
I think that what I've seen is in looking at their draft, they sent me a red line draft. I've talked with Brian Winter about it, and what I would look at is the planned residential overlay development would be, we would have the PROD 1, PROD 2, and so when another project comes in, we would use some of the basis of it, and then we would modify as needed for the PRD number 2 or whatever. We could see this as, the planned residential, York Street development. We could do the next one could be the Park Street development, and then you would tailor them.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Dan that this should be something that when a project comes to us, never mind this one or that one, that they have to meet a criteria before they even bother coming here, and that's what we should be working on.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, well,
rather than trying to tailor things to, because the way I see this going anyway in the future is everything's going to be going, projects like this are going to be going to town meeting anyway. And we get to pick the colors when it's all done. You know what I mean? That's the direction I see things going.
Yeah. Well, it gives you certainty and you know, especially with the bigger projects. I think it's only for the bigger projects.
But I guess, I mean, on the bigger project, I mean, even this project here, it appears we're trying to fit a project to a site, and, okay, we're being told, okay, this is what we want, this is how it has to happen, this is what we're doing, now you gotta write your bylaw to fit us. Instead of trying to fit down, what do we want, you know, as a board and as a town, and is that gonna fit? And I'm not saying this project isn't gonna fit. I think, you know, the project overall, some of what we have for services and criteria, the size of the site, the way it gets backed up. I'm not saying this project doesn't work. I'm looking at trying to find how do we best fit what we're doing now going forward for this project and for, you know, 5 other projects that want to show up in the next couple of years.
Okay.
And that's what I'm trying to, I want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. I think Brian has a good point. Maybe it is that we have to do each project, but I think there should be an outline, I guess, an outline and some criteria that each project fits. I mean, you know, so do we pick the density of this project to be, you know, 300 units for 5 acres, and then we pick the density of the next project to be 100 units for, you know, 20 acres. I'm just, what are we doing? We're gonna get haphazard with the zoning, or are we gonna come into something that's gonna be, you know, works for everybody? And I think that's what I'm trying to get at. How do we make that happen?
Something more universal.
And then possibly site-specific on overlay 1 or overlay 2 or overlay 3. You know, 5 acres or greater, 15 units to the acre, certain amount of setbacks, height, general parking, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So and I guess that's what I'm trying to get into, is how do we, do we make that, or do we just say, well, this is project 1, and we write a whole zoning code to deal with this overlay project that fits their project, and then we go to, you know, a project down the road, we write another whole zoning piece to fit that project.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that falls into what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
I like the chart that they presented earlier. It said, okay, here's your residential C, this is what you would have for setbacks, you know, we meet these setbacks, we meet that zoning, we meet this, we don't meet this, we don't meet that. So maybe that's something that we have to look at, and, you know, that presentation that they put in earlier, I think that that's something we can work with. But how do we make that work? And, you know, and there's different zoning in town. This is an RC zone area, but what happens if somebody's going into a, you know, multi-zone residential area or a general business district area, and they want to do they want to do an overlay district, and the criteria that we presently have in our zoning code, which, again, we want to try to change the zoning, but we need to work with what we have right now. How does that work with this?
Don't we just really need to concentrate on residential, because general business can go under a special permit already?
Yeah, for now.
For now,
A mixed
unless we
use.
change it down the road.
Yeah, this is predominantly residential. I know that the applicant's attorney's here. He submitted a red line draft to me, and which is more, I would say, a lot of more site-specific things. And I've read it. I got it today. I'm going to take a look at it. And, you know.
Well, why don't you do this, Bill? Can you forward that to us, along with that chart that he had, and let us review all of this, and maybe we can comment, each of us can comment by email about what your thought process is, what his thought process is, and at least we have something to maybe get started on the next meeting right now. Because if you're just getting stuff today that they're submitting, red lines, you've got stuff from Brian Winter that he's made comments, I think we should, as a board, be able to review all that, you know, and then be able to comment on it, and then get back to us at the next meeting.
Brian didn't comment on the specific bylaw. I'm going to wait until we get something. I'm going to advertise a hearing. I'm going to advertise a public hearing next Wednesday. So that's the third, that's whatever. And then I have to have the draft available to the public the Wednesday after that. So I'm going to be refining what will be discussed.
But I think we as a board should have the input into that. And,
Okay.
you know, we can read through this here now, but we haven't seen what the applicant's red line is. And
I'll
and I
email
put-
that to you in Word version.
That's what I'm saying. So then each of us can have a chance to put that through you, and then you can take into account each of our talks, and then we can kind of get ready for the public hearing. But until we have that, all of it, we've
Okay.
all had a chance to look through it, I don't think we're
Okay.
going to get very
Okay.
far.
Peter's here. He's staying, so he wanted to comment if he could.
No, I understand. I told him to wait until
Oh.
tonight. That's fine. Let him comment. I'm okay with that.
The attorney for Berkeley is here.
That's fine. He can comment.
Okay.
I'm the Peter on the board.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Peter Tam again for Berkeley Garb. I'll be really brief, and I appreciate where the board is going with this. I think we can be helpful, and obviously you haven't had an opportunity to see our comments. A couple quick points. We've done this before, so the issue you're struggling with as a board, I think we can be very responsive to. Perhaps it'd be more helpful, rather than reading our red line, for us to clean this up to address the principal concern, Mr. Chairman, that you have and that I'm hearing from the board, which is that we collectively ensure that the bylaw that you recommend for town meeting to adopt can be plug and play for other appropriate sites. And the way I would do that, if I hearing your comments, is I would create an umbrella. And that would set the parameters, and I think Bill was starting to identify, and you were starting to identify some of those criteria, that in order to qualify for an overlay, you need to have X, Y, and Z, right? And there are some general purposes that can be even more generalized, right? And these are just to get in the door to speak with you for an overlay. Other communities do this. So Lexington does it, for example. And it's considered sort of a PUD, a planned use development district. The most important piece of that is that in that umbrella overlay, you establish the processes that you go through, right? And what I mean by that is, here's what you need to submit to us as a planning board. And there's going to be a lot of upfront detail, including a master concept plan, which we're working on, obviously. And you'd make that a requirement of any applicant that otherwise qualifies. Once you've done that, you can open essentially review for, and you can establish other requirements. If there needs to be pre-filing reviews, you know, with department heads and with you, that can all be established in that umbrella. Then I think it's really important that every overlay has an associated master plan. Ours is going to be different than another applicant on another site, right? But that the requirements for that master concept plan be established in that umbrella ordinance, right? You would then have an opportunity, the bulk and dimensional requirements will vary based on the plan that you get. So the ones for us, when we talk about the front yard setback, might not apply to someone else. Those will be, as I think Bill is starting to consider, those would be picked up in the special district, right? So you have the umbrella that applies to any of these overlays, and then you'd have the PROD in this case. They always have a silly acronym. It could be, if it's not a planned residential, if you identified, for instance, an industrial site that needed to be redeveloped and you wanted to see specific purposes, you could tailor those for it might not be the PR, you know, it might be the IROD, right, or whatever it might be. And so I don't think it's going to take much work to move some of the items that we've put into our overlay and create sort of an umbrella. And then beneath that, we would have this PROD, this could be PROD 1, or whatever you want to call the umbrella.
Yeah, we could maybe change it to plan residential development, purpose, intent, a lot of the base things you want, and then that would then talk about, you do that, and then we talk about the, York Street PRD. And then the York Street PRD has the specific height, bulk, and those sorts of things.
Well, I mean, I think, Bill, what he was, the idea of his umbrella, I think, is I like the idea of that, the criteria, and then get into specific projects. But having an umbrella that creates not just purpose and intent, which should be part of it, but it also creates criteria for where we could put these and what size lots have in, and what is going to be allowed in them is going to be part of what we're looking at going forward, I think.
So it sounds like the bylaw is going to be a planned residential development bylaw is the umbrella. And then.
You just wanted to limit it to residential?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, we got to deal with just residential. And,
yeah. Planned resident.
For example, in the umbrella, I think it would be important to have it over 55 criteria, those types of things. So there's certain things in the umbrella that we're going to need to put into it. And I like his approach, okay, this is it. This is what you need to have to get in the door, whatever that is. And then once you fit into that piece, then you can get into your specifics of your project. And those specifics, for example, front yard setbacks and building heights may change from project to project, but I think it's something that we need to look at. And then each one of these will have to go to, once the umbrella is approved, each of the planned residential projects would still have to go to town meeting for approval, which we can make that as part of the requirement.
Right, and I look at it as you have the planned residential development bylaw, that's the umbrella. And then when a project comes in, you'll do the York Street PRD overlay. Mm-hmm. That's what we could call it. And then there could be.
So with that said.
And that's where we start talking about the specific height, setback, parking, all of those sorts of things.
Okay, so if we take the York Street project, you're almost talking like two separate articles that would go before town meeting. One would be the overlay that we're planning.
Well, the PRD, Planned Residential Development, that's the umbrella. We're going to call it the Planned Residential Development umbrella. And then here's the York Street PRD overlay.
But would those be two separate articles?
Once we write it, we will look and see if it's one or two different articles.
I could see you potentially having multiple articles.
Yeah, I would think it would have to be two articles, because one is to set up the umbrella, the other is an individual project that town meeting can vote up or down on.
Correct.
Okay, so you're saying we could vote up the first one as a board?
Right.
The umbrella.
The umbrella, and that still would go to town meeting because it's a bylaw. And then that umbrella, if that goes through, would be there for future.
We'd have to do that first.
Right.
Then it would be followed with the
that's what I'm saying.
overlay. And also, most likely, this debate is the development agreement and the what do you call them? You're calling it
master plan.
The concept master plan would also be approved by town meeting. So you know what you're getting.
Right, so that would be, and then the York project would come in after that.
After that, and what you would do for the York Street project is, it has to comply with the umbrella, which it would.
Right, refer back to that.
And then the overlay discusses for that overlay district, which would be that site, would be the setbacks, the parking requirements, the this, the that. And for you, it gives you certainty, because what you would look at doing is, let's say everything passed, and they come in for site plan review, is it in substantial conformance? There would be the overlay, the overarching thing would talk about, minor modifications, major modifications, and those sorts of things on process, on how you deal with it. And then the overlay has the height, bulk, and those sorts of things. So when you get to this project, what you're looking for, you're looking at, does it, it's the the grading, the drainage, the landscaping, a lot of the other things, that, in this case, the traffic, a lot of the traffic will have been, discussed. The final traffic report, stormwater, it gives town meetings certainty that, the process, the site plan process, is it has to be in substantial conformance with what they approved. And if it's not, then, they have to change it.
So like I said. So the plan moving forward right now, Bill, will you be to send that out to us? The client will send out what they believe should be where we should go forward. We can review all those items, individually get back to you, so you have something for mid-August public hearing. And then by that time, public hearing, we've all had our input into it, then we can have a actual discussion for a public hearing.
So are we going to have a public hearing on, we're going to have public hearings on the specific property too?
Well, it's going to be, that public hearing we have will be on the specific property.
The public hearing is for the bylaw.
Uh-huh.
You're not having a public hearing for the specific project as the planning board until...
Unless it's improved by town meeting.
It's in the future, after town meeting. What you're doing is by doing these work sessions, becoming, what they're presenting helps formulate the overlay portion that you're comfortable with. You're comfortable with the parking ratio, you're comfortable with the layout, you're comfortable with the height, because they're going to want to talk about height. It's 4 stories, and a vast majority of their height is under is it the 45 feet? But then if you notice their architects, they have those nice little gables, those go higher. So the overlay needs to discuss, the height. Because
architectural features.
Like the gables, those things are going to, those, instead of being 45 feet, those things might be like 50 feet or, 53 feet or 55 feet. Because if you look at their design, the vast majority of it is the 4-story, but the gables are higher, and height is an issue. But, we can address that, and Peter's pretty good. I've seen his stuff, or the attorney is. We can address that with the overlay portion on, okay, well, the both height is this, for architectural features such as blah, 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 you can go this height. So, and then instead of just seeing that on paper, they're going to show you an elevation. This is what this bylaw gets you. This is what we would like. The main height of these buildings is this, but these architectural features and gables go this high, and this is what it looks like.
For example, if they're hiding air conditioning systems up in that area.
Oh, yeah.
You give them something a little more height just to cover that.
Correct. So, Dan, I've got to rework this. Let me work, I need to, it'll be mid next week. I need till mid next week to, early next week to take a look at reformulating this to the planned residential development and then the overlay portion. And between what they've done and what I've done, I want to reformulate it and give it to you.
Let's send that out to us so we can have a review, and then we can have a good discussion on it.
And Mr. Chairman, just as a point of order, if I may, I don't want you to read my workings right now because it's not responsive to your principal concern, which is the umbrella.
Right.
So I will go back and clean that up and send that to Bill in short order so that you have something that's directly responsive that maybe he can work with. Just to save a little bit of time, because I think that is important, and I know time is sort of the essence.
And I just wanted to make one other point of clarity, because you guys are starting to formulate how this will work in process going into August and September. And we really genuinely appreciate your time. I see this as potentially 3 or 4 warrant articles, and there's a logic to it, right? There's a sequence. The first will be the umbrella that you have impressed upon me that it's really important so that you can plug and play for a future site. And that umbrella is going to be an overlay, but it creates all the process, the qualifications, and the rules for which an eligible site can submit for sort of a subzone or, under this planned residential overlay. So that it sets the qualifications, the standards, and the process. Not a specific project, right? The second article would be our specific York Street as overlay. And it would qualify, we would demonstrate how it meets those standards. The first one has to be approved before the second one's approved, right?
That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
And then there's a few details. The third is the concept plan, because we can say you have to have a 50-foot front yard, but in fact, we're going to exceed that. So the plan will show, and that will be adopted as well, as it'll be referenced in our overlay, the York Street overlay. It's going to be attached to a concept plan, the one that Esther has been working on with you. And that gets adopted by town meeting. The reason why you want that adopted by town meeting is that there won't be a whole lot of variation between that plan and what we submit to you ultimately for site plan. And if there is, we have to explain ourselves. And then the last, sometimes towns do this, you're going to have to just have an overlay plan. So in this case, it's going to be a cross-hatched area of the site that goes into the York Street overlay. Sometimes that's adopted as a separate warrant article.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the very last item is the development agreement, right? And that has project mitigation associated with it.
One of the things I will say is, we've had a couple of projects that have come through, and they take a general business area, and they use, say, 1 unit for a general business, and then they put up this big apartment complex. And our hands are tied. We can't do anything about that. And that may not be addressed in this, but that's something we also have to look at.
It will be
That's,
addressed.
that's a separate issue.
That's separate.
Yeah, but that really is a
We need to
separate issue.
overhaul mixed
I don't wanna-
use in the
I don't
town.
wanna cross
Let's
in
not,
what they're
that's,
looking at is completely different than what that is going on, so.
yeah, that's,
Let's just,
Okay.
I agree with what we're saying, so let's go forward with that. You guys get your letter to, Bill, and then Bill, you do what you need to do, but get it out to us so that we've had a chance to put our 2 cents in worth in
okay.
prior to it getting out to a public meeting, so we know where we're going.
Okay. And the one good thing is, the way I structured this is that the first hearing is August 13th. The next hearing is September 24th. So there's a gap to really refine what we need. And then worst case is, if it's refined, it gives us it's not like we're trying to do it in 2 weeks to get you to the, in 2 more weeks. We've got a month there, to a little over a month to refine it. And if something needs to be tweaked from the 24th, October 8th is the last hearing date to make a town meeting.
Okay, very good.
So midweek, I'm going to get with the Berkeley folks, and he's going to take some stuff. I'm going to look at what I've got. I think we're going to try to agree to this. We'll take whatever, and I may take his and say, and put in some comments. I think we should look at this. I think we should look at this. And that's the way I'm going to take his, because his is much more, his draft, which doesn't address what we're doing, But he's done it in pieces. Would you say, Peter, you've done it in pieces, so it's just reorganizing and then setting up that framework?
Yeah, it's a reorganization.
Yeah, so.
Bill, that's good. We'll go with that faction, get it to us, and that way we can go forward.
Get it to you midweek.
Yep.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I'm sorry it got so late tonight.
We
Got
appreciate
a
your
couple
time.
other projects, and we are where we are right now, so, but we do want to continue on, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Can I have a motion to open up the general business and get into meeting minutes?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so can we review the meeting minutes? Which one do we have right now? Hold on. Open my project.
All right, I've read June 11th, 2026 minutes, and I approve of them. I make a motion.
Second.
Did they address your things, Rich?
I'm sorry?
Did the meeting minutes, I revised them to address
Yes, they did.
your comments?
Yes, they
Okay,
did. Thank
that's, I just wanted to make sure that that's what they did.
Yes.
Because Peter said they met his requirements, but it was really yours.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm taking over here, Dan, I think.
I guess so.
It's okay, he's doing a damn good job.
What, do you want on your boat still?
No, I'm not. All right, that's good.
June 25th.
Do we have any other, items we need to bring up? As far
June
as-
25th meeting minutes, June
Make a motion
25th.
that we accept the minutes of June 25th.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did Dan say aye?
I think Paul's frozen. Did you hear him? Oh, there
Did you
he
hear
is.
me, Paul? Aye.
Okay.
Do we have to say anything?
Anything else?
I don't have any other meeting, I don't have any other business. Bill, are you all set?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All
Thank
in
you very
favor?
much. We'll talk. Thank you all.
Tell them we're all done.
Oh, I got 5 minutes to my bedtime, thank you. Putting too much on the agenda there.
You guys want